how's it going, y'all? Welcome back to a very special episode of the Arcane Archive presents MetaTalks. Since it is, the spooky season, as a matter of fact, it just so happens to be at the day of recording, currently Halloween. Yes, we are currently recording on All Hallows Eve, and we thought, why the hell not? It just would be fair. It would be a disservice, as a matter of fact, to not talk about all of our favorite spooky, scary skeleton monsters in this game that we love so much, because there's a lot of them. There are a ton of amazing, terrifying, heart-rending monsters that you can apply to your campaigns in order to make them a little bit more terrifying and horrendous and heart attack inducing for your players. This is probably a particular episode that Sammy will have near and dear close to his heart. If you haven't noticed already, he has quite the avid interest in all things horror.
I'm very excited. I love weird, creepy monsters. It's a shame that I don't have the opportunity to throw stuff like that at people.
Man, I'm telling you, you need to start making some fun, dope, horror, one shots or something. I will absolutely do that shit with you for sure. We need to get that started at some point. I've already got a couple of ideas myself for some one-shot campaigns and everything. But yeah, you know what? With all of that preamble, let's go ahead and dive right on into today's episode of MetaTalks Halloween Edition. Sammy, would you like to go ahead and introduce what is your first monster that you'd like to pull out today for people to introduce in their campaign?
So I'm going to start. Most of my beginning ones are going to be low level. I find the most scary D&D is when it's very easy for players to die. And I like to start out with a classic. I don't think that people think of these as scary. But it's gonna be very basic. I'm gonna go with scarecrows. I know it's right in the name.
Fun. Yeah, those are fun.
The reason being is the gimmick of not appearing to be a monster and then appearing to be a monster. I did this in a short campaign I did with people where they were in a small town, they looked out and they see all these scarecrows, and then at random times during the night or stuff like that, the scarecrows wouldn't be there anymore.
Yep.
And then when you get up again, the scarecrows are back.
Yep.
And it was this kind of back and forth of are they there? Are they not there? Am I seeing things? And just, they have an ability literally with no save, no check, no nothing. It's called false appearance. While the scarecrow remains motionless, it is indistinguishable from an ordinary inanimate scarecrow. There is no magic to tell the difference. There is no skill check to tell the difference. Now, as a DM, obviously you can change that. But the idea of walking through a field or scouting, a caravan at night, and all of a sudden you hear wood creaking as these creatures pull themselves off of, hastily built poles to hold up a scarecrow is a terrifying thing, especially if you don't know where the sound is coming from.
Yeah.
They also have a built-in fear mechanic, which is nice. Which the frightened target also gets paralyzed, which is even more perilous than a normal frightened.
Those types of ones are even worse if it literally restricts you.
They are resistant to non-magical attacks. They are immune to poison and a bunch of charmed, frightened, exhausted, paralyzed, poisoned, and unconscious. But they are vulnerable to fire, which I think is a cool.
That's a fair caveat. Yeah, I think it's a fair trade-off for sure. Makes sense. They're made of straw.
They're considered a construct. You could make an argument that they're kind of both construct and undead in a way.
I was gonna say there's a bit of undead there with the whole ghostly or
but they're
dynamic.
They're just considered a construct. It's cool though. The idea of something that can something that is mundane becoming something that is a threat.
And there's very little way of being able to ascertain its true nature aside from it choosing to reveal itself. That is always that scary factor added there, where you're just especially if it's you're in a field, obviously, a huge cornfield with probably a ton of normal scarecrows, but every so often you have scarecrows that aren't normal, they're alive, and you're oh crap, you can't tell the difference.
Yeah, I also love the fact that with some constructs you'll have issues, or some undead and constructs, if their creator dies, you might have problems with this. the scarecrow has it talks about the fact that it'll just continue doing, like
What
it's
is
possible that
yeah?
it'll just kill
What
itself, but it'll just continue doing things. It's
a
inhabited by
lot?
an
Yeah.
evil spirit, and so the idea of a hag creating a bunch of these scarecrows, leaving them in a town, and then the hag dies from adventures or something, and
And they'll
now
just
you
keep
come
doing
back,
their directive,
all of a sudden you get called back to this town, and it's like, yeah, they sent adventurers here to kill a hag, they were successful. All of a sudden now there's people going missing,
Yep.
and you come back and now there's this like group of scarecrows taking and killing people in the night, and nobody knows why, because every morning the scarecrow's still there. Like, that's such a like, it's peak horror. I love it so
Oh
much.
yeah, I'm gonna that particular aspect. There is one monster that, in regards to horror, for me, takes probably the cake of any horror monster I ever like. I want to play in a game with this monster so badly, Sam, for
I'm
so long,
intrigued.
and I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna save it for a little bit later, because that one is my ultimate monster. That
Yeah.
I think, if you've never heard of it before, oh, you're gonna be. It'll make you very happy, Camper. I'm so excited to see your reaction when I tell you.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go off of your scarecrow with another pretty classic monster that I feel like also elicits for any party of almost any level, if you're smart, that is a visceral amount of fear and worry when you encounter it, but especially at lower levels. And this monster is going to be the Banshee.
Nice.
The Banshee is a classic monster that you will find in basically, I believe, any edition of D&D. A pretty classic monster just in folklore itself overall. Essentially, they are always known as kind of like spiteful, vengeful spirits of, dead individuals who have come back. Usually female are normally the forms that they, or the spirits that they kind of exhibit from, that have like horrifying visages, and their most iconic ability is their shrieking wail ability, and almost everything apart. But I mean, the Banshee itself overall is not the most threatening or deadly of monster. Just when you look at them, that to start off with, they're a CR4 monster, so like nothing to sneeze at. Like, it's a decent like CR rating,
But they're
especially
resistant
at that
to
level.
everything.
They're resistant to a lot of stuff. I mean, that was also, I think it comes from their classic, like in the, like, from first edition to 3.5, like undead were just resistant to almost everything. Like, undead were some of the most terrifying beings to face back in the older editions, because of the fact that they were like resistant to almost everything except for like radiant damage and like celestial stuff, as well as like a lot of their shit would like take away your vitality like permanently. Like, they would like take away not just health, not just whatever, but they could literally, some of them could literally suck away your levels sometimes.
Yeah.
In older editions. Like, they could literally level drain you. Terrifying. They obviously they began to walk that particular aspect back a little bit in later editions, like with like, fourth edition and especially fifth edition, because that kind of stuff kind of sucks, especially if you put in like years of work into a character, and then all of a sudden this one monster that's undead just like saps away half your levels, and you're like, what the like. Either way though, focusing on the fifth edition version of the Banshee, they have resistance to acid, fire, lightning, thunder, and bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from all non-magical attacks. That is quite the wide repertoire of resistances.
Not just that, they're
immune to cold, necrotic, and poison damage. The
only thing they're not resistant or immune to is radiant, psychic, and force.
Yeah, literally. And obviously magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. So like, that's to be fair. But again, at this level, usually when you'd be probably introducing a Banshee and like the most optimal time, your party may not necessarily have a lot of magical weaponry at their disposal, and most of your spellcasters will have elemental spell attacks rather than, just magical bludgeoning. And so it's like, these things can absolutely, for almost any party, even a higher level play, if you throw like multiple Banshees at them at once, oh my God, it becomes a fight for your life. Especially again, they're not super bulky or beefy. They've got 12 AC or 12 armor class. They have 58 hit points. They can fly at 40 feet per 6 seconds. They essentially have dark vision out to 60 feet. They do have an ability known as Detect Life. They can magically sense the presence of creatures up to 5 miles away that aren't undead or constructs, and they know the general direction they're in, but not necessarily their exact location. But either way, this shows here that, like, regardless if you like hide or if you like, you know, are invisible, whatever, they will always be able to sense you within 5 miles. Like, again, they don't know your exact location. It's, I think, similar to like a ranger's like primal awareness or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Where basically they know that you're there, but they don't, and they know your general direction, but not necessarily where you are specifically. So you can still like hide from them in the area, but they will always know generally where you are. On top of that, obviously, as you would expect from a ghost type undead, they are incorporeal and they can move through solid objects and creatures as if they were difficult terrain. Meaning that these guys, they have a literal 360 degree of movement at any time. They can phase into the ground, like, and then pop up at another place. Sure, it does cost like, you know, twice their movement, so they can't move as far. They'd only be able to move like, you know, 20 feet or whatever. But that's still crazy in terms of like, if they phase into the ground, you effectively couldn't get any attacks of opportunity on them. If they want to run away, they would be able to like position themselves like easily around to like do a multitude of their horrifying effects and abilities. They've got, for their normal kind of just like bread and butter attack, is called Corrupting Touch. It's a spell attack, melee spell attack with a +4 to hit. It'll deal 3d6 +2 necrotic damage on a hit. As well as their other ability known as Horrifying Visage. Each non-undead creature within 60 feet of the Banshee that can see her must succeed on a DC 13 Wisdom save or be frightened for 1 minute. A frightened creature can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns with disadvantage if the Banshee is within line of sight. But should it succeed, it will end the effect on itself, and if the target saving throw is successful, or the effect ends for it, the target is immune to the Banshee's horrifying visage for the next 24 hours. Now, I think we talked a little bit about this in some other episodes, but like for this type of thing, I don't really like the caveat of basically being like, if you succeed, you're now immune to it for 24 hours. Like, I still feel like it should be like, if you succeed, that's great, but it should still be able to like affect you. I would maybe do the caveat of like making it like a recharge ability then. Or maybe not even recharge, because the DC is also pretty low. It's a 13. And so even with, like, again, disadvantage for a lot of characters, wisdom is going to be probably pretty decent and high. So I feel like they have a pretty high chance of making this. And so I don't see a reason to keep it necessarily to make them immune for 24 hours. But that being the case, we finally get to its essentially the absolute pinnacle of this creature's ability and might, and the ability that should always make almost any party like hesitate to deal with them directly in a confrontation, is their iconic whale ability. Now, this is an ability that they can technically only use once per day. Thank God for that, because the Banshee releases a mournful wail, provided that she isn't in direct sunlight. This wail has no effect on constructs and undead. However, all other creatures within 30 feet of her that can hear her must make a DC 13 con saving throw. On a failure, a creature drops to 0 hit points instantly. Doesn't matter. If you fail, you just drop to 0 hit points. There's no other save. There's no other caveats. There's no resistance. You are just out. On a success, the creature will take 3d6 psychic damage. So that being the case, again, even against high level parties, if you have high level party, like if somebody has like lower like wisdom and they don't have proficiency in wisdom saves at that point, they still have the potentiality to just drop. And so once again, if you introduce to a high level party, like, you know, even levels 13 or maybe even higher, and you have like you introduce to them like 4 banshees, they have 4 uses of this whale, potentially dropping almost your entire party, like with one of them, let alone 3 others. Like, that in and of itself, in my opinion, provides the Banshee as being like one of the scariest creatures to ever encounter at any level, which I feel like, and also obviously it has the whole caveat of being a undead, ghostly, horrifying creature, which is, it just screams, no pun intended, horror, as it were.
I love it. Yeah, and that's one of those things, like, obviously it's not technically in the rule book, but you know, necromancers, people that can summon greater undead, there's no reason why you couldn't have a couple of those slinking around to make a encounter that might not be that hard.
If you do, like, it's just like, that's the thing, right? I feel like this monster is so well balanced, in my opinion, because again, it doesn't have a high armor class. They don't have super high health. But if you don't take them out quick, like, they have a ton of resistances and immunities. And if you don't take them out quick, they have the potential, not a high one, mind you, but a pretty even one, of just TPKing your party with bad rolls. Like, all it takes is just one bad roll. And they're just out. Like, and again, obviously your friends can try and res you and such, but like, if you throw like 4 or 5 of these beauties at them, they will be in that will always be a legitimately threatening, but in my opinion, not overpowering or unfair encounter. Like, it's just like, yeah, as long as you roll decently, like just medium or average, you should be okay. But if you roll bad,
in reality, if you throw these at a low level party, and you mean it's very easy to kill them, but even if you
low level party for sure.
Say you throw this at like a mid game party, you know, 8, 9, 10 level party. If say everyone but 2 people fail their saves, you know, hopefully one of them is the healer because they have high wisdom, and you just throw a mass healing word or mass cure wounds and everybody's up again. But it makes something that might not be high stakes into something that definitely is.
Because it also depends on, like, you know, your initiative round, where it's like, okay, who's going first? If one banshee uses wail, and like you said, all but 2 of the party members go down, then the other banshee can either do another wail or attempt to just attack either the 2 people that are up, or even just attack the person who's down on the ground, potentially killing them instantly. Like, you know, like, it's
to take. I want to take something at my next one to be in the same undead vein.
Please do.
This one's again kind of a supporting undead that will still kill your whole party. Is the Bodak. I don't know if you're familiar with the Bodak.
I don't know if I'm familiar with the Bodak. Go ahead, give us a rundown, buddy.
CR6. It's a medium undead, you know, just under 60 hit points. It's resistant to cold and fire and bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing.
He is a beautiful monster.
Oh, he's wonderful.
Look at that face.
Yeah. So immune to necrotic and poison, can't be charmed, frightened, or poisoned. Has really good dark vision up to 120 feet. Ostensibly, it's a reanimated devout follower of Orcus. They have a couple really great abilities. The Death Gaze. When a creature that can see the Bodak's eyes starts its turn within 30 feet, the Bodak can force it to make a DC 13 con save if the Bodak isn't incapacitated and it can see the creature. If the saving throw fails by 5 or more, the creature is reduced to 0 hit points unless it is immune to the frightened condition. Otherwise, the creature takes 16 or 3d10 psychic damage on a failed save. Unless surprised, a creature can avert its eyes to avoid the saving throw at the start of its turn. If the creature does so, it has disadvantage on attack rolls. Basically, same as like the what are they called? Like the Medusas and
the petrification or whatever.
Yeah, what's the other monster?
The basilisk.
Yeah. It is hyper sensitive to sunlight. That's like the one downfall. It takes 5 radiant damage when it starts its turn in sunlight, and it has disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks. Usually monsters won't take damage. This one will take damage.
Yeah, it's only, those are only like, you know, for like vampires and like more powerful types of undead usually will be like, oh yeah, they cannot handle sunlight at all.
Now here's that. Obviously all of that was just if it looks at you. We'll get into its action. It has a fist attack, which is not very good at all.
No,
Well,
but I mean,
it's fine. It's a
I
D4.
mean, it's a
It's a D4 and
D4.
2D8
That's
necrotic.
2 day necrotic. I mean, but you also, I think, missed one particular ability that's also incredible is the aura of annihilation.
Well, no, I'm getting to that.
Oh, okay.
That's at the end there.
All right, fair
It
enough.
has a withering gaze, which this one is spicy. Once one creature that the Bodak can see within 60 feet of it must make a DC 13 con save, taking 4d10 necrotic damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. So in reality, beginning of an encounter, if this thing surprises you, it's possible that you either die outright or take 3d10 and then take another 4d10 in the same turn if it focuses on you.
Yeah.
But the best one by far is in which to me makes it also a support undead, is that every turn, like while this effect is active, its aura of annihilation deals 5 necrotic damage to any creature that ends its turn within 30 feet. Undead and fiends ignore this effect. So you put one of these in like the middle of an undead horde.
You're just slowly being decayed.
Like to me,
thing.
This is perfect. It's Orcus. That's what Orcus does.
Oh yeah,
so
dude. We're gonna have to talk about the Lord of Undead at some point throughout.
There's other undead that I want to bring up that are part of Orcus. Because of the instance of how terrifying these things can be. This is something that you have a horde of zombies or skeletons or something being controlled by somebody, and right in the middle, hunched down right in the middle that you can't really see because it's a little hunched and kind of
Oh yeah,
is one of these things.
It's much more like, subtle and like probably dwarfed by many other more like overtly threatening undead. Like
it would be a little bit terrifying, and I love it. These are one that sometimes I like to throw these in like super low level campaigns and kind of turn the damage down just a touch.
Maybe just a tad.
It's something I like doing in horror games because there's not a huge amount of low level monsters that you'd work for like level 3.
Yeah, at least not any that are either like truly fitting for that level. Like not any that wouldn't be like either way weak or way too powerful for them. Like there's not a lot of good balance.
So what I like to do is take some of these monsters and maybe
reduce threat down. Just reduce threat,
but make them still scary. And this is something like just the face alone, this almost like horrifying,
like it's elongated, like a stretch,
it's like a stretched scream mask but made out of skin.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
It's great. Honestly, he is a beautiful boy. We gotta love him.
These are one of the ones I think a lot of people don't think about, but the cool part to me is some of their backstory as well. Their whole thing is like they retain a vague impression of their past life, and it seeks out former allies and enemies alike to destroy them, as its warped soul seeks to erase anything connected to its former life. Minions of Orcus are the one exception to this compulsion. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, honestly, definitely love that. Like again, we're definitely gonna have to get more into Orcus, I think, by the end of this, at the very because he is the Lord of Undead. He's the Demon King, the Demon Prince of Undeath. And who, if not he, would be like, even his whole visage is like the perfect representation of Halloween on how he looks. Like he's gotta be I mean, maybe also Demogorgon too, I guess, to a certain extent. Like a lot of demon lords, to be fair, would be very like Halloween-esque. Yeah, I mean, they are all terrifying for different reasons.
What's the mushroom one? What's the fungus one?
Zuctamoy.
Yeah, that one also would terrify me.
I mean, Jublex is he's the Lord of Slimes, bro. I mean,
and some of the high level slimes are terrifying because they
can my
look
god,
like people.
Are you kidding me? The Oblex or whatever. Oh my god. Even heck, dude, I would say like maybe one of the most terrifying like freaking Dagon. Dagon's gotta be up there as like one of the most terrifying mother effers in the cosmos. Just like because he's that fear of like underwater, like the deep, dark underwater like sea crap.
I don't know if I'm familiar.
Really, you're not with Dagon. He's in really good with Demogorgon actually, but he is considered to be an Oberith, I believe, is what they were originally called.
How do I spell Dagon?
Dagon. Dagon. Yeah, Dagon. He is a demon prince as well at this point. But he is not technically what are known as the Tunari demons. The Tenari would be like all the present versions of the demons, like, you know, Demogorgon, Orcus, Gratz. They're all considered Tenari demons. The first demons in the Abyss, I believe, again, were called Oberiths, I believe is what they were known as. Dagon
He's not in
one of
the
them.
monster manual.
Because he's not statted out. Again, he is like he's almost like a mix of like Eldritch Far Realm with the Abyss demons at this point. Like, he is like, I'm wondering, I thought that they may have had an actual stat block for him.
Ooh,
oh yeah.
Ooh, gross.
Yeah,
Ooh, I love it.
Yeah.
Oh my god, this guy's cool as fuck.
He is amazing. He is one of my favorite demon princes / demon lords.
Yeah, he's not in 5e. He's
no.
in 4E.
Yeah. They didn't stat him for 5e yet, because again, he is beyond what like a normal, you know, fight would normally be, because of his oldness and his unknowableness to a certain extent.
That's so cool.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites. I love him, and he would be the perfect eldritch monstrosity, like Far Realm-esque. Just he is a badass, and I
love that he's like, people talk about smart. he could have claimed the Demogorgon's realm in the Abyss.
Oh yeah, he could probably have killed Demogorgon multiple times at this point, but he hasn't, because he doesn't want that kind of animosity or infamy right now. Like, he is smarter, and he works kind of more behind the scenes, and he and Demogorgon are friends, and he supports Demogorgon and helps with him, you know, because he's easier to kind of control in that way. But he's great. We could probably talk about him too. But I will say, for the next monster that I specifically do want to get into more specifically, just more so as an honorable mention, just to throw it in there again as a, interestingly enough, terrifying monster for a very like small reason. Their overall like armor class is only 11. They have 45 hit points. They are not like, their challenge rating is also 4, like the Banshee. They're ghosts. It's literally just simply ghosts.
Ghosts.
Just ghosts. Yeah, literally. Same thing as the Banshee. They've got resistances and immunities, the same exact out the wazoo, as well as condition immunities, like they can't be charmed, exhausted, frightened, grappled, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, prone, or restrained. Nice. They have ethereal sight. They can see 60 feet into the ethereal plane when they're on the material plane, and vice versa. So they can always see in both the planes at once. They can move through objects and such like they were difficult terrain. They have withering touch, basically the same before, as if it's a +5 to hit. You take 46 +3 necrotic damage. And they can go ethereal. So they can, unlike the Banshee, they can go into the ethereal plane just at will and out at will as much as they want. They also have horrifying visage. However, theirs is a little bit different from the Banshees. For each non-dead creature within 60 feet of the ghost that can see it must succeed on a DC 13 wisdom save or be frightened for 1 minute. And if they save fails by 5 or more, the target also ages 1d4 times 10 years with that. So just as a heads up for all of you, doing a little bit of quick math there. If you're a human or any creature that has a lifespan comparable to 1, you roll a 4 on this d4, you will instantly age 40 years.
Oh no.
Now, again, for longer lived races such as like elves, dwarves, gnomes, halflings, half elves, maybe. I mean, even with half elves,
half-elves and halflings are both human years. And
no. Half elves are like, they live to be like 120 to 150 years.
That's still 40 years is.
I know what I'm saying. Even with that, like, I would say same thing.
Gnomes are like what, 200-300 years?
No. Gnomes are like, they're like 400 to 500 years.
Oh, okay.
They're the second. They're the second longest.
That's an eighth of your life. That's ridiculous.
It's still crazy, and a lot of you just instantly age 40 years from an action.
Would you rule if 2 ghosts hit a human with the same and they were like in their 40s, it would just outright kill them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how you could. Or at the very least, it would take.
You'd be completely incapacitated.
Yeah, you'd be incapacitated. It would take, like, to be aged that intensely, like so quickly. Like, it was like, there's no way you'd be able to continue to fight at that point. Like, that would take such a toll on your body at the very least. But that again, that shows even at these low levels how even against higher level characters how dangerous these things are by comparison, even at such a lower CR. Continuing on, if a target saving throw is successful or the effect ends for it, the target is immune to the ghost. I would probably say that this is fair to be immune. You know what I mean? Because the added caveat of like the 1d4 age times 10 aging, it's like, yeah, that's not fair to have that constantly be a threat if you successfully save from it. The aging effect can be reversed with a greater restoration spell, but only within 24 hours of it occurring. So if you literally throw this at a lower level party and they don't have greater restoration at that point, they are just stuck permanently like that, unless like maybe by means of like a wish spell or some shit. Or something else that somehow, like, you know, lowers their age. Like this thing is deceptively deadly and dangerous. And we haven't even
for different reasons.
We haven't even gotten to like the last ability they have, which also arguably is one of the absolute worst, even more scary. They have the ability to possess your party. Now, to be fair, this one is on a recharge of a 1d6, so you have to roll a 6.
You have to hit a 6. Yeah.
You have to hit a 6 to recharge it, like you know, a dragon's breath weapon.
Oh.
However, if they have it ready to go right off the bat, one humanoid that the ghost can see within 5 feet of it must succeed on a DC 13 charisma save. Charisma. And check it, ladies and gentlemen, there are not a lot of classes that have proficiency in charisma save.
Paladins and bards, baby.
Yep, indeed. I think also sorcerers, right? Yeah, sorcerers also have charisma and con. Suffice it to say, this is a hard DC to beat, even at high level, because
unless you pump into charisma or take resilient, you're not.
If you do pump into charisma, it's like most classes, unless that's their main spellcasting stat, aren't going to put a ton more into charisma for that, for that reason. You'll leave it mostly probably at like a 14.
Oh, and Warlock.
Maybe 16. What is Warlock also charisma? I thought Warlock was intelligence, and it might be charisma. It makes sense if that's their primary stat.
I believe it is.
But I thought otherwise.
Yeah, still, I mean, like, most classes are not going to have a particularly high charisma save. And the reality is, like, one bad save, and you now have to down or use spell resources to get rid of a possessed.
So here's what we'll say, right? On a failed save, they will be possessed by the ghost. The ghost then disappears and the target is incapacitated and loses control of its body. The ghost now controls the body but doesn't deprive the target of awareness, meaning you know and see everything that's happening right now. The ghost can't be targeted by any attack, spell, or other effect except ones that turn undead, and it retains its alignment, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, and immunity to being charmed and frightened. It otherwise uses the possessed target statistics. However, it does not gain access to the target's knowledge, class features, or proficiencies. So it can't. I mean, it makes sense in that it's like, hey,
I would let him use the.
You can't control a person to then become like a wizard. You know, your level 16 wizard can't then start like fireballing his friends.
No, but I'd argue. I'd argue martial classes.
Maybe. Like,
okay, hear me out.
Here's what I would say. I would say with these ghosts, once again, I would say I would give like these ghosts, for instance, class levels, right? I would be like, they were like adventurers or whatever before they died and became like, you know, resentful, angry spirits, like restless spirits. So like if they were like, for instance, if this ghost had classes in fighter and possessed a fighter, I would be like, yeah, you know how to use that fighter's abilities now, depending on the level that they were.
I'd say maybe
they're only a challenge of 4.
You cut it off at like level 5, maybe, because I think giving like an extra attack.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that just makes sense.
I would take that out completely because I have a terrible idea. You possess a party member that's asleep and then make them walk around town and kill people. While everyone else is. That would be terrifying.
That would be horrible.
You'd have to really trust your players, and they would have to really trust.
They have to really trust you as the GM, and it would be like. But that in and of itself, and we're not even done. The possession lasts until the body drops to 0 hit points, or until again you use certain spells that allows the the creature to like redo the save, or that forces the ghost spirit out of your friend. The ghost can end it as a bonus action, or the ghost is turned or forced out by an effect like the Dispel Evil and Good spell. When the possession ends, the ghost reappears in an unoccupied space within 5 feet of the body, and the target is immune to this ghost possession for 24 hours after succeeding on the saving throw or after the possession ends. So I have a personal story about this in a high-level campaign where our GM threw like these ghosts at us, and we didn't have any divine casters at all to help with this. And like it was a party of 4 of us, and 3 of us at like level, I think we're level like 15 or 14, got possessed by these things. And it was just us, 3 of us against our fighter, who somehow was able to make the save. It's like indomitable.
That's awesome.
It was just like, it was, because there's nothing you can do.
No.
You are effectively done. You are out of the combat.
Oh, that's so good.
It's no matter what level, these things are terrifying. Like, ever since I've had that, I've always been like, okay, I got to make sure in case we encounter any kind of ghosts or specters that I have like protection from good and evil at the very least, like of what I've got at the very least, because you have no defense against this kind of thing. Once you loot, once it's like if you fail the save, there's no getting out of it. You can't, you don't make another save to get out of it. You're just done unless an outside force can force the spirit out of your body. You are just stuck. If you have no divine casters, you're almost completely screwed at that point. Like,
I didn't even think about the fact that technically, because it's a ghost and it has an intelligence, it can talk.
Yeah, it can still talk through you.
So if it has enough memories of its previous life, it could take control of you and act as it would have with a body.
Yeah,
and really like
potentially it could do some horrible stuff. Like, if people don't even know what's happening, like, again, it doesn't get any of your memories or knowledge, to be fair.
No, but
it's still like, like that.
How terrifying. But like a rogue being taken over by a ghost and like just assassinates the party in their sleep.
It is horrendous. It is this, like, again, it is a terrifying experience to be like, wow, I failed to save and I'm just done. My body is gone. I can't, like, and even worse, you are still conscious for everything that's happening. You see what you're doing, like what your body is doing. You are completely aware of what's happening. Imagine a necromancer sicking this on a party, and like literally causing you to murder your own friends and then murder like yourself or something. Like, you're just like,
oh my god,
oh my lord.
If you want to get real and like terrible with this is just my brain. If you had someone who like had some sort of sway over the ghosts, whether it was through a magic item or whatnot, and they like pretended to be close to you and like got to know an individual, like one of your party members, and then sicked ghosts on them during the nighttime, and they because they have a pretty good charisma.
Yeah,
the ghost could take over this person, and using information gathered on that individual,
they could do performance, deception, like
they
could do their best to pretend if they have enough knowledge prior. Like, and you know what? I will even say again, like, another
that would be terrible.
We can go ahead and springboard, as a matter of fact, right off of that, if you don't mind me doing another honorable mention. Like, this ghosts and banshees again live up to their true legacy from like their earlier editions and still being terrifying enemies to face at any level. But another particularly terrifying enemy to face, especially and I think you would agree, Sammy, I think a lot of people may have recently been experiencing this, another terrifying enemy to potentially have to face, and I would love to make a campaign kind of centered around this: doppelgangers. And doppelgangers and changelings. These things, and again, for everybody who might be playing like Baldur's Gate 3, getting to Act 3, you're going to have some, and I don't want to spoil too much, but suffice it, you're going to have some fun, interesting interactions with some of these folks there, which are and done so well, so cool. I was so inspired by that experience. And it's just like, these guys, changelings and doppelgangers, can be an absolutely terrifying prospect, exactly for even the reason that Sam just mentioned for ghosts, that these creatures, they, especially doppelgangers, changelings don't have quite the same thing, but doppelgangers have the ability to read thoughts. The doppelganger can magically read the surface thoughts of one creature within 60 feet of it, and the effect can penetrate barriers, but 3 feet of wood or dirt, 2 feet of stone, 2 inches of metal, or a thin sheet of lead blocks it. While the target is in range, the doppelganger can continue reading its thoughts as long as the doppelganger's concentration isn't broken, as if concentrating on a spell. And while reading the target's mind, the doppelganger has advantage on wisdom, insight, and charisma, deception, intimidation, and persuasion checks against the target. Not only can they, at that point, begin to slowly siphon off information, but when they transform and change, they then have still the ability to gain advantage on saying the right things to convince you that they are who they are showing themselves to be.
They get a flat +6 to deception.
Yeah,
with advantage
already with advantage
is ostensibly what, a +11?
Yeah, +12. Like it almost doubles your chances potentially, or at least increases it by like, I don't know, like an extra 10% or something. I forget the exact math. But either way, like their ability to shape change again is second to none, except for like, you know, changelings being up there with them. The doppelganger can use its action to polymorph into a small or medium humanoid it has seen, or back into its true form. Its statistics, other than its size, are the same in each form. Any equipment it is wearing or carrying isn't transformed, and it reverts to its true form if it dies. Another terrifying prospect is it has the ability known as Ambusher. The doppelganger has advantage on attack rolls against any creature it has surprised. It also has surprise attack, so it gets basically an extra 3d6 damage if the doppelganger is able to surprise a creature and it successfully hits it with an attack during the first round of combat. Like, this thing is an ambush predator to the max, if you haven't seen.
Yeah.
And even more so than changelings or mimics or whatever, is an even more convincing, as you would assume, a performer, because of its ability to read surface thoughts and gain a little bit more insight and ability to trick and persuade people of who it is. Like,
and the reality is that these are not inherently evil creatures. They're neutral.
They're not.
So like, there's nothing to say that like a doppelganger can't be necessarily friendly or indifferent to a party.
Oh, absolutely.
Just
same as change.
The fact that once you introduce one,
your party,
there is going, like, same thing with the Rakshasa. There will always question
paranoia. You will incite that little like just straw. Like, you put it in there, that little tick. You put it in there every time now you interact with anybody. And I would love to play a campaign where it's just like there is a whole horde of doppelgangers like trying to take over, like, you know, a city or a town or something, like, right? Like, they've all come together, congregated under some kind of like malevolent direction, and they're like, we want to have a place for our own, and they're like, the entire town is infested with doppelgangers, and you have no idea who could be a doppelganger, who can't be. You just don't know. There's no way to really tell unless you use like certain abilities that allow you to see it. But what if they also have wizards? You give them class levels.
Yeah, it would be
use arcanist aura to disguise their true, like, it wouldn't matter. Like, there's no way to discern until they transform. Like,
the scary part, I think, or something that would work, is if you have like a hub town that's like smaller, and when you start the game, everything's normal, and the further you go, the longer you go, more and more people are being replaced by doppelgangers, and you don't, like, there's no tell, there's no nothing. If the party starts to investigate, obviously there can be clues, and like, you'll roll for deception, stuff like that. But the longer the campaign goes, the more and more members of this town are no longer the original members. And it doesn't necessarily have to be evil to you. Like, to them, this is a completely normal, like, well, this is what we want. We're trying to make a place for ourselves. And the only way they could see doing it is to take over something that was already established. Because I don't know if it's with all doppelgangers, or like, you could kind of homebrew this yourself, but this idea of like, well, I want to be something that's not what I currently am. Because I know with changelings, there's like this pull to like make a second personality to kind of play out that fantasy.
It is almost part of their, like, not just culture, but even
it's like an intrinsic want.
Yeah. It's like an instinctual like desire to be like, I want to have this persona that I have created and built to be able to live as this person as well.
Yeah, but why create my own when I can steal someone else's?
It's easier. They
And-
already have an established life.
It
like
would be
a basis,
so
like
imagine all of a sudden you're like in a tavern and you realize that like you guys are now the only normal people left. Like that would be a terrifying thought because you can trust no one. Everyone can read your thoughts unless you're using magic or some sort of item to ward that. Like that would create the utmost paranoia because now people coming in on caravans, they have no idea. Normal people have no idea.
So here's a little bit of some background for you guys for flavor text for the doppelganger, right? Hedonistic swindlers. Doppelgangers work alone or in small groups with group roles shifting from con to con. While one doppelganger takes the place of a murdered merchant or noble, the others take on a number of identities as circumstances warrant, playing the parts of family or servants while they live off the victim's riches. Another thing being, too, is like, for instance, doppelgangers share a similar kind of background to changelings, and that they're like, doppelgangers are too lazy or self-interested to raise their young most of the time. A lot of them assume attractive male forms and seduce women, leaving them to raise their progeny themselves. And a doppelganger child appears to be a completely normal member of its mother's species until it reaches adolescence, at which point it discovers its true nature and is driven to seek out its kind to join them. Like, these guys are like, they like you kind of imagine, at least, like in terms of their apparent instincts, they might be more so akin to being, very... I do believe that in recent editions, they have been kind of shown to be more Fae-like in nature rather than like monstrosities, which makes sense. Like that
they are technically monstrosities.
They are, but because again, changelings are Fae specifically, and changelings are specifically Fae.
Interesting.
And changeling and doppelganger have a very similar kind of aspect, which shows that like doppelgangers also probably exhibit a lot of Fae-like tendencies. In terms of like they specifically, their attitude and behavior is a little bit more maybe narcissistic, self-absorbed, not necessarily like malicious.
They're just considered their own race. Changelings. They're just considered
I believe in the new editions they have a much more. They do not have more connection. I mean, I will say again, in actual folklore where changelings come from, they're specifically tied to Fae. Of course. So I believe this is I believe there's also like, I'm pretty sure I've seen in a couple of things. Like, are you checking Volo's or not Volo? Fucking
they're only in Eberron.
Are they not? I thought Mordecai and Monsters of the Multiverse released a new thing for them. I'll have to check that later. But overall, like their overall like behavior is Fae-esque, because that's also kind of where this original monster is kind of derived from. And it's not necessarily malicious or intentionally horrendous. They're just kind of selfish and kind of, self-absorbed.
No, it is Fae. That's weird.
Yeah, I was gonna say, they should be Fae, I believe. I've seen a lot of iterations, like even like Critical Role has been specifically showcasing them as like specifically Fae with like the new release, I believe, for changelings. Because it used to be that they were just like their own thing, like doppelgangers are kind of just like a monstrosity own thing. But then they're like, actually, no, because their original source material is derived specifically in regards to like, Celtic, I believe, Fae. They gave them that connection. Same thing with like goblinoids are now also part of like the Fae thing as well now a bit, as well as some other things I believe have been.
They're still humanoid.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
But yeah, so like hobgoblins are more Fae-esque now and stuff too, like as well as other like normal goblins as well. But yeah, like that, like these creatures have the ability to provide for your party that sense of paranoia. Like Sam said, you introduce just one of these guys, like they fight somebody, and it just, as they kill them, they turn back into a doppelganger, and you're like, what? Wait a minute. And you're just like, how many more people are doppelganger? And again, that I want to run or play in a campaign where it's just like attack of the doppelgangers, where you're just like, you have a whole horde of doppelgangers and you just don't know who is a doppelganger, who could be. You're in a city that they've infiltrated, and you just don't like. Heavy inspiration for sure from Baldur's Gate, because it's just it was such a fun aspect and concept, and I wish there was a little bit more focus specifically on that, which I think would be amazing. Especially again, if you gave them like class levels and stuff too on top of that. A terrifying prospect for sure. What about you, Sam? Show us some other monsters that you're interested in, and telling the people that gets their jibbies all in a twist and gets their spines tingling.
Well, I'm gonna go back to Orcus for a minute.
Please do.
I'm gonna talk about the spawn of Cusis. If you're familiar.
That sounds familiar.
So it's again challenge rating 5. It looks like a normal zombie, except that's right, it can infect other people to become zombies through worms of Orcus. They're burrowing worms. So these are undead, normal humanoid size, immune to poison, exhaustion in the poison condition, normal dark vision. They have regeneration, which they regain 10 hit points in the start of its turn if it has at least 1 hit point and isn't in sunlight or a body of running water. If the spawn takes acid, fire, or radiant damage, it doesn't function as well. The spawn is destroyed only if it starts its turn with 0 hit points and doesn't regenerate. So it basically has a built-in I don't die until I say so mechanic.
It's got that troll in them.
It has worms as a feature. If it's targeted by an effect that cures disease or removes a curse, all the worms infesting wither away and it loses its burrowing worm action.
It has worms as a feature.
It does. It has a multi-attack feature. It makes 2 claw attacks and it uses its burrowing worm feature. So claw attacks are 1d6 slashing plus 2d6 necrotic. That's decent for a zombie type creature. The burrowing worm effect. A worm launches from the spawn of Cusis at one humanoid that the spawn can see within 10 feet. The worm latches onto the target's skin unless the target succeeds on a DC 11 dexterity saving throw. The worm is a tiny undead with an AC of 6, 1 hit point, a 2 in every ability score, and a speed of 1 foot. While on the target's skin, the worm can be killed by normal means or scraped off using an action. The spawn can use a burrowing worm to launch a scraped off worm at a humanoid it can see within 10 feet of the worm. Otherwise, the worm burrows under the target's skin at the end of the target's next turn, dealing 1 piercing damage to it. At the end of each of its turn thereafter, the target takes 7 or 2d6 necrotic damage per worm infesting it, maximum of 10d6. And if it drops to 0 hit points, it dies and then rises 10 minutes later as a spawn of Cusis. If a worm-infested target is targeted by an effect that cures diseases or removes a curse, all the worms infesting it wither away. Now, obviously, as an adventurer, these aren't super... It wouldn't cause much of an issue unless you had more than one of these targeting you. And that's the scary part about this, is that if it just attacks a town per se, and you have a bunch of people who are already injured,
infested,
can't run away, all this thing has to do is infest one person, and now 10 minutes later there's 2 of them and they can infest 2 people, and then
it's
more,
a literal
and more,
plague
and more.
that's gonna spread. Like,
now what's cool is that they don't look like anything aside from an ordinary zombie until they choose to either let the worms come out or you get close to them, you can notice the worms.
Yeah, no, there's no way. And so if you have like a full zombie horde and just have a couple of these sprinkled throughout, there'd be no way to tell the difference until it might be a bit too late. Like,
it's the thing is, it's to a maximum of 10d6. So after it does the 10d6, the worm is gone. Well, I don't think it leaves. It just can't do more damage. The thing is, like, it can put worms into people, and then once that person dies, whether it's from the damage of the worm or from something else, it'll rise back up.
Yeah, it'll rise back up.
And so the idea for me is, like, there's no... the thing is that it could just launch these worms out and leave them there, too. So you can walk into a room with what you think is a normal zombie, and you look, and all of a sudden, make a perception check for me. You hear this wriggling noise at your feet, and you're in the dark, and you move your torch to look down, and the floor is covered in worms.
Maggots and worms.
And like,
oh god.
I love stuff like that.
I mean, we gotta, yeah, that's
Any weird monster where there's some sort of infestation
yeah.
of worms and weird
It's a
things.
literal biohazard-esque kind of vibe to it, where it's just like, Jesus.
Yeah, there's a there's a podcast that I listen to that is kind of like my what I want to achieve one day with horror, which is the Magnus Archives. I don't know if you've heard of it or not.
I have heard of Magnus Archives,
but it
yeah.
focuses on these like innate fears that every being on Earth has, whether it's animals, humans, all these different fears. And one of them is like that pestilence, like that rotting or like insect plague kind of fear. And one of the avatars of that is this woman who gets infested by these worms. And then she'll like she can control them, so she'll like send the worms and they'll like dig through foundations and crack through walls and try to infest you. And it just, yeah, it's same thing with like, that's why we were talking about Star Spawn earlier. Is anything that can like send something out to slowly overtake you?
Yeah, no, it's, I mean, that's some of the scariest thing. Again, you turn your enemies into your allies. There's no stronger like tactic in any kind of like warfare or ability to conquer than that. And I do appreciate the fact too that with that particular monster, like, because obviously zombies in this game, like they take on a much more of the fantasy zombie trope where it's more like magic rather than it being like a plague or infection or virus kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But those specific zombies do kind of have that same terror added to them in terms of like they can infest you.
Well, that's that's the Orcus influence. That's finest.
He wants to turn everything into undeath. Orcus just hates life. It's too loud. It's just annoying.
Well, these come from a high priest
of Orcus,
and then created them. And then after that high priest's death, people sought out information from this specific high priest, this like ritual to make more of these. So this is something that like if one of these appear in a town, it was deliberately created in an attempt to spread this plague in Orcus's name. So if you ever meet these in a campaign, you now have to deal with the fact that like in the back of your head, they're like, someone doing
sent
this.
Yeah,
someone this didn't just appear.
This didn't just happen. Yeah, no, this is not a natural occurrence. If undeath ever truly is, sometimes it is, but that thing is terrifying. I
would love you could do this to animals.
Yeah, literally. God. Imagine. You just become the thing. It's just the thing at that point. Like, it's like,
well, imagine now you're dealing with like a pack of wolves, which run a lot faster than a human, just full of worms.
Yeah. We're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and move on to this a little slightly less nasty, but maybe not. We'll see. Very, very iconic mention to this particular rogues gallery of Halloween scary terrifying creatures, and we're gonna go ahead and lob it off to the Hags of the D&D world. They are, I mean, come on, y'all, we can't have like a Halloween theme kind of episode without mentioning the Hags, the sisters of the Feywild, the good old, just your quintessential, folklore, what are they called? Fables, like witches of the old, we've got a multitude of different hags, obviously, all across the world and the planes, but I feel like the hag that might most well embody or maybe two, I should say, that the two hags that embody like kind of the vibe and theme would absolutely be the night hag and the green hag. Obviously, the green hag is like your true default archetype for like, all of those old fable stories about hags living in the woods that like would take children or whatever. But the night hag absolutely embodies like true darkness and evil and shit like that. So we'll go ahead. We'll talk about the night hag first real quick. Sly and subversive, night hags want to see the virtuous turn to villainy, love turned into obsession, and kindness turned to hate, devotion to disregard, and generosity to selfishness. Night hags take perverse joy in corrupting mortals. Night hags were once creatures of the Feywild, but their foulness saw them exiled to Hades long ago, where they degenerated into fiends. The night hags have long since spread across the lower planes. These particular hags are often considered to be the most dangerous and powerful of any hag. Like night hags are considered like, if we're talking about a hierarchy like giants or dragons, like, how reds are the strongest chromatics, golds strongest metallics, and storms the strongest giants. Night hags would be considered usually the strongest of all hags, especially when they have a coven. But night hags, a number of their more iconic aspects of them is they have, really quirky, strange items that you can only ever get. It's often referred to as hag magic that only hags have access to. No other spell practitioner or magic practitioner in the world knows or understands how they're able to craft these specially made items and bits of magic that they do. Night hags having quite a few interesting ones. A night hag will always carry 2 very rare magic items that she must craft for herself. If either object is lost, the night hag will go to great lengths to retrieve it, as creating a new tool takes time and effort. One of these being a heartstone. This lustrous black gem allows a night hag to become ethereal while it is in her possession. The touch of a heartstone also cures any disease, and crafting a heartstone takes 30 days. Another item that she has, the other of the 2, would be a soul bag. When an evil humanoid dies as a result of a night hag's nightmare haunting, the hag catches the soul in this black sack made of stitched flesh. A soul bag can hold only 1 evil soul at a time, and only the night hag who crafted the bag can catch a soul with it. And crafting a soul bag takes 7 days and a humanoid sacrifice, whose flesh is used to make the bag. Now, they are soul mongers, night hags. While a humanoid sleeps, a night hag can straddle the person ethereally and intrude upon its dreams. Any creature with true sight can see the hag's spectral form straddling its prey. The ethereal hag fills her victim's head with doubts and fears in the hope of tricking it into performing evil acts in the waking world. The hag continues her nightly visitations until the victim finally expires in its sleep. If the hag has driven her victim to commit evil deeds, she traps its corrupted soul in her soul bag for transport to Hades. Now, hags are terrifying for many reasons. Usually they're just unknowable and weird magic, but also in terms of just a lot of what they can do. For instance, a normal night hag is a CR 5 creature. They have an armor class of 17, 112 hit points, and they have skills in deception, insight, perception, and stealth, as well as resistances to cold, fire, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from attacks that aren't silvered, or from non-magical attacks that aren't silvered, excuse me. They have immunity to the charmed condition, and they have a dark vision out to 120 feet. They are powerful, innate spell casters. They can cast detect magic and magic missile at will. They can plane shift. They can plane shift 2 times a day, only on themselves, cast Ray of Enfeeblement and sleep as well 2 times a day. They have resistance to magic, as well as the ability to transport to the ethereal realm and back at will like ghosts before. And they have an ability known as Nightmare Haunting that they can utilize once a day. While on the ethereal plane, the hag magically touches a sleeping humanoid on the material plane. This is basically the whole act of them going into their dreams to begin coaxing them to do evil acts. Doing so, as long as the contact persists with the target, it has dreadful visions. And if these visions last for at least 1 hour, the target gains no benefit from its rest, and its hit point maximum is reduced by 1d10. If this effect reduces the target's hit point maximum to 0, the target dies, and if the target was evil, its soul is trapped in the hag's bag. That is again, you can literally haunt your players' dreams. You throw this hag at, again, a lower level party, or even a higher level party, depending. And if they don't have any idea what's happening, because if she's in the ethereal plane, they can't see her. unless they cast like see invisibility or true sight. Like they wouldn't even know what's happening. All they would be like is you don't get a long rest. Oh, and your hit point maximum is reduced by 10. Like, you're just like, wait, what? And he's like, you were having horrendous dreams last night, just terrible visions for some weird reason. Like, you don't really understand why. Something dreadful is happening. And if they don't have any idea what a night hag is, it's like, and obviously here would be the time where the GM should like start putting down like, hints here and there of like, oh, children going missing, or like multiple people have been dying kind of this thing, like just randomly in their sleep for some weird reason. And like all kinds of people have been committing strange, like they've almost been becoming completely different people. Like their minds, like they were so good and nice before, and then all of a sudden they start like abusing like their family, or they start like doing all kinds of horrendous other like stuff, and like these that were completely out of character. It's like you could create such paranoia, you could create such absolute fear and terror at large in a town with one of these things. It's amazing. Like they are one of the best for this particular thing, exactly because of their nightmare haunting ability. They only have to be in contact for an hour, and not just that, your party member wouldn't be able to benefit from a long rest. They wouldn't be able to revitalize, get any of their stuff back. Like they would slowly begin to just decay. And this isn't even like the strongest version of a night hag. Night hags that are in covens are even more powerful. They literally get like far more spells to be able to utilize. Like they each can cast like identify, ray of sickness, hold person, locate object, bestow curse, counterspell, lightning bolt, phantasmal killer, polymorph, contact of the plane, scrying, and eye bite. Like their power goes up exponentially with a coven, and that means that there's at least 3 other night hags or other hags in general in the area, meaning that their ability to spread throughout the community and continuously cause nightmare hauntings increases 3-fold, if not maybe being more. Like these creatures, again, amazing potential for a horror or Halloween inspired campaign. 100%, dude.
Which we love.
We love it. Yeah, love to see it. Got another one there, Sammy?
I do. This is something a monster that I actually paired with a dusk hag.
Ooh.
Which is it's very similar to the night hag. It's not as powerful. But which I know I've mentioned these before when we talked about monsters, which is the mean locks.
Yeah, the mean locks are fun. Mean. Yeah, they are mean.
They used to be fiends or aberrations, I think. Now they're considered fae, as a lot of monsters have been changed.
Well, that's what again. They're being changed to fit more so in line with their original depictions in folklore and mythos. Like mean locks were always considered to be, again, like Celtic fae creatures, like Celtic fae giants, or not fae giants. I'm sorry, those are I'm forgetting what those ones are called. But the mean locks, they're like fae-esque creatures and monsters.
Well, no, there's a lot more evil, like things that they've turned into evil fae, which I actually think makes more sense.
Yeah.
The Meanlocks are fae that invoke terror and seek to destroy all that is good, innocent, and beautiful. These bipedal crustaceans, they look like crab people, ostensibly.
Yeah. Those are what they're. Yeah.
The reason I like these,
what I was thinking of, but Meanlocks are also, yes, they're also.
Yeah, the reason I like them so much is they are spawned by fear. When terror overwhelms a creature in the Feywild or another location where the Feywild's influence is strong, one or more Meanlocks might spontaneously arise in the shadows or darkness nearby. If more than one Meanlock is born, a lair also magically forms. The earth creaks and moans as narrow, twisting tunnels open up within it. Once one of these passageways serves as the lair's only entrance, and a large central chamber serves as the Meanlock's den. And it is covered in large black moss, which muffles sound. Here's what's a couple cool things. These are not super high challenge. They're challenge rating 2, 15 armor class, which is actually pretty high for a CR2 monster. 31 hit points, 30 speed. They are immune to frightened. They have 120 feet of dark vision, and they use telepathy. They have a fear aura, so any beast or humanoid that starts within 10 feet must succeed on a DC 11 wisdom saving throw or be frightened until the start of the creature's next turn. While in bright light, they have disadvantage on attack rolls as well as perception checks because they are light sensitive. They have a claw attack that does 2d4 damage, doesn't sound like a lot, but they must succeed on a DC 11 con save or be paralyzed for a minute. The target can repeat.
Nasty!
The target can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on itself. But if you get hit again, there is no like, oh, once you save, you're done.
Yeah, no, that just keeps happening. Like...
They also, as a bonus action, on a recharge or on a 5 or 6 of a d6, they can teleport to an unoccupied space within 30 feet of it, provided both the space it's teleporting from and to are in dim light or darkness. The destination need not be within line of sight, as they have a sense of where every shadow lies within 30 feet of it. A cool ability that is not in its stat sheet is telepathic torment. Up to 4 Meanlocks can telepathically torment one incapacitated creature, filling its mind with disturbing sounds and dreadful imagery. Participating Meanlocks can't use their telepathy for any other purpose during this time, though they can move about and take actions and reactions as normal. This torment has no effect on a creature that is immune to the frightened condition. If the creature is susceptible and remains incapacitated for 1 hour, the creature must make a wisdom saving throw, taking 3d6 psychic damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. The save DC is 10 plus the number of Meanlocks participating in the torment, which is up to 4. Considering only those that remain inside of the victim for the entire hour and aren't incapacitated doing it. The process can be repeated. A humanoid that drops to 0 hit points as a result of this damage instantly transforms into a Meanlock at full health and under the DM's control. Only a wish spell or divine intervention can restore a transformed creature to its former state. Now,
and you realize, again, paralysis makes you incapacitated.
Yes. Now, my favorite thing, the reason I paired this up with the Dusk Hag is that the Dusk Hag likes putting people to sleep.
Yeah.
It has innate spellcasting to put people to sleep. And so the caveat on telepathic torment does not state that the Meanlocks couldn't gang up on you, paralyze you, beat you to 1 inch of your life, and then convert you.
Oh, well, because they'll instantly crit you if you fail the paralysis.
And they can do it non-lethally, just like a normal adventuring party can. The reality is that all that the torment has to do is that damage has to put you to 0. They can capture people. What a hag can do is entice people to come get advice, put you to sleep. Meanlocks will come up, they just beat on you. So this is ostensibly something that you could take normal everyday people and turn them into an army of tiny crab men.
Well, that's the thing, because once they knock you unconscious, you would technically be unconscious for like 1d4 hours. Usually is how that kind of goes. Like, unless somebody else like heals you and gets you up.
If they put you in unconscious, technically, unless someone does a medicine check.
That's what I mean. Unless they heal you, like or stabilize you. I mean, you usually like a creature, unless somebody like deliberately wakes you up. Like if they knock you out, I think it's like the rule. Like you roll, like you'll unconscious for at least 1d4 hours, at least. Like so, it's like even if you roll a 1, you'll still be unconscious potentially for the 1 hour of being incapacitated to have to make the save. Like that's. Jesus, like,
well, so all they have to do is put you to sleep. So if a hag puts you to sleep, you're now considered incapacitated because that's what it does.
Well, that's the thing. If you're asleep, if you take damage, normally you can wake up from it.
Yeah.
So I mean,
but the damage happens at the end.
Yeah, so it's like that.
I mean, as long as they keep you asleep.
So that's what I mean. Like they could potentially just like, again, if they gang up on you, attack you, you'll have to keep making just saves for that paralysis, and odds are you're gonna fail at one point. They'll crit you. They'll all crit you. Like at that point, unless
once they get you down to hell.
That's what I'm saying. Like if they get you down to like technically 0, but they do it non-lethally, technically I think you still have you end with 1 hit point. You don't actually go to 0. You have 1 hit point left. At that point, you're unconscious still, and you're unconscious for 1d4 hours unless somebody heals you or wakes you up. Then they can just do that thing, and it will guarantee take you down to 0 to then turn you into a mean lock. Like that's, oh god, if they ambush you with that, like it's almost a guarantee. Like unless you can kill them quick enough.
Yeah, essentially, if you're alone and there's more than like 2 of them, you're dead. And the reality is that for monsters like these, they're CR2.
Yeah,
they can teleport. They talk telepathically, so if they don't want to, you won't even hear them necessarily. They have really good dark vision.
They have great stealth, dude. They got like a +6 to their stealth.
The reality is they don't even have to create a layer. The Feywild interjects itself into the material plane and gives them a place to stay that is neither in the Feywild or the material plane. It's literally like a passageway between the two that they just reside in. And these things are like, I love them because they're little crab guys and they don't look like they're gonna kill your entire party.
I don't know if you ever did, and like I don't think this will be too much of a spoiler because I'm not gonna say specifics. But you fight these things in Baldur's Gate 3 too.
I've never seen them.
You've never seen them? Oh, dude. I don't want to do too much spoilers on here.
I'll just look it up.
I think it's Act 2. Yeah, it's Act 2 specifically that you fight them in. It's an area that's you fight mean locks in Act 2. Yeah. I'm telling you, man, like you missed the Kuatoa, you missed the mean locks. Ah, dude, yeah, these things were definitely, and there was a lot of them down there too, where you have to fight them. There's like a whole horde and swarm of them that's just down there. It's crazy. These things, they definitely were a surprise when first encounter. I'm like, oh, it's the mean locks. Then I was like, yeah, I can take these dudes. I'll tell you after. I know where they are. I'll tell you after we get done with this. I don't want to spoil it for anyone else who might find them, organically or whatever. But they're fun. They're definitely really cool. It was a treat to see them in Baldur's Gate 3, especially because they utilize a lot of the stat block for what they can do. The paralysis, the fear effect, and their fear aura effect. Like it's all there. Their ability to shadow teleport. Like when they did that, I was like, oh my god! I was like, I was not expecting to be able to do all of that. And it was a really cool. But yeah, we'll go ahead and head on to another one. I think at this point we should start maybe talking about again some of the big boys of horror.
I have one ready.
Our fun friends that were kind of really feeling like they are the leaders, the pinnacles that really induce that kind of horror. And again, we kind of already had talked a little about them earlier. I think I personally would love, and since he's apparently a little bit new to you, I would love to talk about Dagon. Dagon is known as the Prince of the Darkened Depths, the primeval Leviathan, a demon lord whose presence brought fear of the sea and all that lurked beneath the dark, murky depths. He was a massive being, ancient and powerful, even by old Oberith standards, and yet also an isolationist that acted as an oracle for the Tanari from within the depths of the Shadow Sea. Dagon is, again, considered to be probably one of the oldest, I believe, Oberiths at that. Like and Oberiths themselves were the progenitor demons who came over from a separate reality that they had previously dominated and completely destroyed, essentially almost all life save for themselves, until they saw, like, across the cosmic pond, so to speak, our little sliver of energy, light, and life, and decided that they wanted to move on to a new conquest. And he was among the few Oberiths that were able to make that long journey over into the present reality of like 5th edition, as well as some other things, or not even just 5th edition, I should say, but into like the world of Dungeons and Dragons. You know what I mean? Dagon's endgame remains as mysterious and inscrutable as ever, and there is no doubt that the Lord of the Darkened Depths could have easily claimed Abyssum in Demogorgon's absence, yet he did not. This is an excerpt from the Demonomicon of Igwilf, otherwise known as Tasha. Dagon's form is a mixture of both like octopus and giant like praying fish. Often if you kind of look at it, he definitely has like some serious what are those fish called? The deep death fish with like the lanterns or whatever. Anglerfish. Anglerfish, yeah. He's got a real octopus / anglerfish kind of vibe and thing to him, which is again super awesome. Dagon sprouted countless tentacles and was covered in black, rubbery skin that was punctuated with many red, unblinking eyes. Fish scales shielded his flesh, and row upon row of long fangs jutted from his maw. He stood more than 40 feet, 12 meters tall, and was considered one of the most fearsome of the demon lords. Dagon also seems to have had so-called heroic or good progeny in Faerun, interestingly enough. One for certain in the form of Captain Foster, one of the heroes attempting to stop the Eladrin Malana from opening the far manifold with the Key of Stars in the Year of the Secret, 1396 DR. Foster's heritage manifested itself in increments periodically during his quest. Originally, he believed it to be of Kuatoa origin, but eventually it was revealed to him via an extremely painful transformation that he was in actuality a demon scion and a direct descendant of Dagon himself. Now, who exactly Dagon was able to reproduce with to create him is still, I believe, is a bit of a mystery. But I mean, that's gotta be some crazy shit. Oh man, to be trying to get it on with dear old Dagon. But I mean, good lord.
My next warlock.
Literally, bro, it's gotta be like, I mean, Dagon is so cool. Dagon was primarily served by aquatic demons, especially like Wastrelith, and it was worshipped by aquatic races such as Krakens, Chuls, Sea Hags, Water Nagas, and Kuatoa. In ancient myth, when the first primordials arrived in the abyss, Dagon was already there, lurking in the depths. When Demogorgon went to claim the Shard of Evil, Dagon rose out of the blood sea to challenge him for control. Though they fought a titanic battle, the shard was claimed instead by Obaxab. He was the first demon lord of everything, I believe. Ooh. Or he was either the first or second. He may have been. I think it was the first, and then the wolf spider took it from him after that. But I believe Obaxab was the first. In later times, Dagon was the only one of the demon lords to be known openly as an Oberith, because the Tanari went to like basically exterminate all the Oberith, because the Oberith had created the Tanari as like slave labor, basically, like in their fights against like the Celestials and every other like, you know, reality people in the world, because they were trying to destroy everything and expand the abyss to cover everything. They created the Tanari as a means of shock troops and expendable soldiers in their war with them. And eventually they rebelled and got really angry. And Dagon, actually, Demogorgon, is believed to have been the first of the Tanari demons to have been birthed, which is also why he is considered to be the strongest and the actual prince of demons currently. Also because he killed the previous prince of demons, which was Miska the wolf spider. But yeah, Dagon's history on Toriel lay below the surface of the Sea of Fallen Stars and the waters in the west of Mastika. He and his minions lurked for a long time in the trench of Lopak and were only known as those who sleep below. They infested the dreams of those who swam in the Sea of Fallen Stars with nightmares, and the most ambitious of the demons was Prince Dagon. He planned to overcome a pantheon of sea creatures and achieve their divine powers for his own. And to reach this goal, he brought the depths of the Sea of Fallen Stars under the control of his servants and their forces. And the next step was made with long-forgotten eldritch magic. He restricted the influence of the deities of the Shalaran in the Sea of Coronactus on the west of Mastika. And the next step was the creation of 5 wild tides to sweep large numbers of Shalaran into the Sea of Fallen Stars, where his minions could slaughter them in the thousands. The first wild tide began in 1509 DR with the opening of the wild tide portals connecting the 2 ocean realms, and many Shalaran were swept into the Sea of Fallen Stars, and where roughly 70% died under the attacks of Dagon's servants. The rest were only rescued by the intervention of enemies of Dagon, like merfolk. Dagon repeated this tactic every 720 years, and the last wild tide was in the year of the unstrung harp, 1371 DR. This time, the portal stayed and became permanent. The Shalaran of Faerun kept the portal a secret, fearing that others could use it for their own ends. But another fact was more disturbing for them. Between the 4th and 5th tide, the Shalaran of their homelands near Mastika had all but abandoned their gods because they had grown silent. Instead of the gods, they began to venerate the demon Dagon, and his cult became the dominant religion in the Sea of Coronactus. The Shalaran of the Sea of Fallen Stars cut off the travel between their communities, but it was too late, and the cult of Dagon had already taken root among their ranks and grew in secret. This guy is insane. Like, he is the epitome of terror, and the fact that not only is he, again, one of the most massive demon lords, princes that exist, like just physically, but also one of the most, if not maybe, the most intelligent of the old demon lords that came over from a previous reality where they had won. They had dominated and destroyed everything and everyone and came over here. And he is one of the old demon lords to survive the mass destruction and slaughter of his race of Oberits. And he's currently the best friend / manipulator of the current Prince of Demons, Demogorgon himself. And this whole thing that he just did, where he basically took over an entire swath of Faerun by himself, cutting off divine powers and gods from being able to intervene in his machinations, to the point where he gained the worship of the whole of the Sea of Stars. He is terrifying.
It combines the Eldritch and
that's what
abyssal horrors in one, which I love.
A fusion of Far Realm and Demon and the Abyss into the perfect creature of just utter horror and terror. It's phenomenal. I love him so much. He is one of my favorite, if maybe not my favorite, demon lord. I would love to run a campaign with him. There are a number of others that I really do love too, but Dagon is definitely one, and he's also one that has not gotten nearly enough love and attention, in my opinion, for a long time. Specifically in 5th edition, he should get way more props and attention for the thing. But that's, I guess, also, to be fair, that is kind of his thing too. He doesn't like to be out more in the open. He prefers, again, Demogorgon or whatever else. He likes to work in the shadows mostly, but god damn, he is so cool. What are some of your big boy
it's funny,
friends?
One of my favorite monsters is something that you might find serving or advising a demon lord. The Sybriex.
Sybriex.
And this is definitely in on the more body horror aspect of the Abyss, or those kinds of areas, as it is a floating putrid being.
These things are just nasty.
Imagine the grossest thing you can see, full of pus and vitriol and blood,
just
with
a
weird mangled face
just
in
all
the middle,
kinds of fluids just dripping down,
covered in chains,
rotting pustules.
The Sybriex, they haunt remote parts of the plane where they use vile abilities to create new horrors and seek ancient lore. Rivulets of blood and bile cascade from a Sybriex's body, polluting the surrounding landscape. They've spent eons amassing knowledge from across the plains, hoarding it for when it might be useful. Such their incredible intellects and stores of information. Demon lords and other powerful beings use them as advisors and oracles, and then they can create demons as well. Some of their armor class of 19, 150 hit points. They have a hover speed of 20, saving throws in intelligence and charisma. They're good at arcana, history, and perception. They're resistant to cold, fire, and lightning, and then bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical. Immune to poison. True sight up to 120 feet, and a passive perception of 23. They speak every language and have and telepathy up to 120 feet. They have an aura of contamination, 30 feet in every direction. Vegetation withers in the area, and the ground in the aura is difficult terrain for other creatures. Any creature that starts its turn in the aura must succeed on a DC 20 con save or take 4d6 poison damage. A creature that succeeds on the save is immune to the contamination for 24 hours. It has legendary resistances, magic resistances. It has multi-attack, where it makes 3 chain attacks and a squirt bile attack. The chain is just 2d12 force damage with a reach of 15, and then squirting bile is 120 feet. The target must succeed on a DC 20 dex save or take 9d6 acid damage. It also has some spell casting, requiring no components, and a spell casting ability with charisma, so DC 21. Command, dispel magic, hold monster, and once a day feeble mind. It also has, this is my favorite part, the warp creature ability. The Cybriac targets up to 3 creatures it can see within 120 feet of it. Each creature must make a DC 20 con save. On a successful save, it becomes immune to the warp. On a failed save, the target is poisoned, which causes it to also gain 1 level of exhaustion. While poisoned in this way, the target must repeat the saving throw at the start of each of its turns. 3 successful saves against the poison to end it, and then it also removes the exhaustion. Each failed save causes the target to gain another level of exhaustion. Once the target reaches 6 levels of exhaustion, or it dies instantly and transforms into a living mane, which is a small fiend. Underneath the Cybriax's control, the transformation of the body can be done only by a wish spell. Here's the cool thing. This is a variant part. It's the flesh warping. Creatures that encounter a Cybriax can be twisted beyond recognition. Whenever a creature fails a saving throw against the Cybriax's warp creature effect, you can roll a percentile die and consult the flesh warping table, which is my favorite table in 5e.
Of course they have a flesh warping table. Why
to determine an additional effect which vanishes from the warp creature when warp creature ends on the creature. But if it transforms into a mane, the effect becomes a permanent feature of that body, which, by the way, can happen up to 6 times.
Yep.
The creature can willingly submit to flesh warping, an agonizing process that takes at least 1 hour while the creature stays within 30 feet of the Cybriax. At the end of the process, roll once on the table or choose one effect to determine how the creature is transformed permanently. Now let's go over, just for the sake of my enjoyment, let's go over some of these wonderful flesh warps. Let's see. The color of the target's hair, eyes, and skin becomes blue, red, yellow, or patterned. The target's eyes push out of its head at the end of stalks. The target's hands grow claws, which can be used as daggers. One of the target's legs grows longer than the other, reducing its walking speed by 10 feet.
It's like...
The target's eyes become beacons, filling a 15-foot comb with dim light when they are open. A pair of wings, either feathered or leathery, sprout from the target's back, granting it a flying speed of 30 feet. The target's ears tear free from its head and scurry away. The target is permanently deafened.
Of course, of course.
The 2 of the target's teeth turn into short tusks. The target's skin develops bark-like scales, granting it a +1 bonus to AC, but reducing its charisma by 2. The target's arms and legs switch places, preventing the target from moving unless it crawls. The target's arms become tentacles with fingers on the ends, increasing its reach by 5 feet. The target's legs grow incredibly long and springy, increasing their walking feet by 10 feet. The target grows a thin, long tail, which can be used as a whip. The target's eyes turn black, and it gains dark vision up to a range of 120 feet. The target swells, tripling its weight. The target becomes thin and skeletal, halving its weight. The target's head triples in size. The target's ears become wings, giving it a flying speed of 5 feet.
Okay, that's nice. Is it also deafened with that one too?
No,
I feel like
they just turn into little wings.
I was gonna say, I feel like it would have to be though, like with how fast they'd have to beat, it'd be like a fucking hummingbird. Like, be like,
unfortunately not considered deafened. The target's body becomes unusually brittle, causing the target to have vulnerability to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage.
Jeez.
And this is a great one. The target grows another head, causing it to have advantage on saving throws against being charmed, frightened, or stunned. Now, here's what's awesome. This monster is considered typically chaotic evil. It might not be.
It's a demon.
Well, here's what's cool for me. Make this a warlock patron.
Oh god.
And as your warlock gets higher and higher,
give them levels, more body shaping.
You can subject the person to flesh warping.
Yeah.
Because some of these you could get away with. Like my favorite thing to me would be if you do things that the Cybriax likes, it gives you positive flesh warps. If you do things that the Cybriax doesn't like,
it'll make your ears fall off and you'll be permanently deaf.
Yeah, well, it could give them back. I think, to me, I think this is something that like the Cybriax would have the ability to reverse that.
I mean, you have to find your ears wherever the hell they ran off to.
It just grows you new ones. This thing has. I mean, it has power over the flesh.
Yeah, no, this thing is insane. Holy crap.
Like, the thing is, you'll never find this completely alone because it always have swords of mains by it.
It's I mean, these things are considered to have been as old as the abyss itself. Yeah. And if demons are constantly coming to ask it questions and gain its favor, you damn well better believe that it's gonna have a freaking entourage of all the kinds. Like hell, I wouldn't doubt they each have maybe a Baylor with them. Yeah, at given points. Like
the reality is with these things is that you can convince them to not outright kill you because they want knowledge. They want something, but it's only if it's advantageous for them that they'd even think about working anywhere near you.
You know what? If we're going on the topic of like flesh warping, ancient, manipulative, eldritch, abomination and creatures, I feel like it would be a disservice. I'll go ahead and meet you there, bud. Let's talk about the aboleths. Let's go ahead and give them a bit of a shout out here if we're gonna talk about that kind of stuff. Yay. Aboleths, my friends. These guys are also quite the powerful. I mean, I say powerful in a means of they're not the most, again, physically powerful necessarily, but they are in terms of like they are aberrations specifically. And so think of them again very similar to mind flayers, or rather illithids, and beholders, all that stuff. Like they are very powerful manipulators and controllers. That is primarily their biggest thing. But aboleths, before the coming of the gods, aboleths lurked in primordial oceans and underground lakes. They reached out with their minds and seized control of the burgeoning life forms of the mortal realm, and their dominance made them like gods. Then the true gods appeared, smashing the aboleths empire into dust and crumbles. However, the aboleths never forgot. Aboleths have flawless memories. They pass on their knowledge and experience from generation to generation, and thus the injury of their defeat by the gods remains perfectly preserved in their minds, as if the current progeny were there at that time themselves. Aboleths' minds are treasure troves of ancient lore, recalling moments from prehistory with perfect clarity. They plot patiently and intricately across eons. Few creatures can conceive of the extent of an aboleth's plan. They dwell in watery environments, including ocean abysses, deep lakes, and the elemental plane of water. In these domains and the lands that adjoin them, aboleths are like gods, demanding worship and obedience from their subjects. And when they consume other creatures, aboleths add the knowledge and experiences of their prey to their eternal memories. Aboleths use their telepathic powers to read the minds of creatures and know their desires. And aboleth uses this knowledge to gain a creature's loyalty, promising to fulfill such wants in exchange for obedience. And within its lair, the aboleth can further use its powers to override senses, granting creatures such as followers the illusion of promised rewards. The aboleth's fall from power is written in stark clarity on their flawless memories, and for aboleths, they never truly die. If an aboleth's body is destroyed, its spirit returns to the elemental plane of water, where a new body coalesces for it over days or months. Basically the same as a demon or a fiend, or any fiend, basically, as a demon or a devil. You kill it on the material plane, it will simply go back to its home plane to reconstitute itself over a period of, for them, it's days or months. Usually for fiends, it's like, it can be anywhere from like, 100 years to like a couple, like months or something like that, I think. Ultimately, aboleths dream of overthrowing the gods and regaining control of the world. And aboleths have untold eons to plot and prepare their plans for perfect execution. So, with that little flavor background out of the way for you, aboleths, they also have other incredible abilities beyond just their psychic prospects. They have an armor class of 17, 135 hit points. They have a speed of 10 feet on land and a swim speed of 40 feet. They have proficiencies in saving throws of con, intelligence, and wisdom, and in skills, history, and perception. They specifically have dark vision to 120 feet, as well as their languages are deep speech and telepathy. They are a challenge rating 10 creature. They are amphibious. They can breathe air and water. They're not just fish. They don't just have gills. They have the ability probing telepathy. If a creature communicates telepathically with the aboleth learns the creature's greatest desires if the aboleth can see the creature. There's no save. You don't get to resist this. It's just able to do that. If the creature communicates telepathically with it, it learns that. So if one of your people know how to communicate telepathically with it, or if you respond to its telepathy, it can do that. Specifically, if the aboleth can see the creature, of course. So if you're not seeing, then it can't. But if you are, then it's almost impossible that it won't at some point be able to. The aboleth itself also has an ability known as mucus cloud. While underwater, the aboleth is surrounded by transformative mucus. A creature that touches the aboleth or that hits it with a melee attack while within 5 feet must make a DC 14 con save. On a failure, the creature is diseased for 1d4 hours, and the diseased creature can breathe only underwater. Now, one particular thing to be aware of is this mucus. It's not part of the stat block, but it has another thing where, similarly to the flesh warping of the Cypriacs, this mucus can, if they spend enough time in it, permanently change them to becoming underwater denizens. Not just changing them physically, but also, along with another ability that I'll show you in a second on the stat block, it enslaves their mind psychically to begin to worship and obey the aboleth completely. Yeah. The aboleth's actions, it can make 3 tentacle attacks with its multi-attack if it would like. It's gonna have a +9 to hit, as well as dealing 2d6 + 5 bludgeoning damage. And if the target is a creature, it must succeed on a DC 14 con save or become diseased. Again, diseased with the same kind of thing that their mucus cloud diseases them with. The disease, a little bit different. The disease has no effect for 1 minute and can be removed by any magic that cures disease. After 1 minute, however, the diseased creature's skin becomes translucent and slimy, and the creature can't regain hit points unless it is underwater, and the disease can be removed only by the heal spell or another disease-curing spell of 6th level or higher. And when the creature is outside a body of water, it takes 1d12 acid damage every 10 minutes unless moisture is applied to the skin before 10 minutes have passed. So this, again, this mucus or this disease it all has to basically do with, at the end of it all, if you spend too much time with an aboleth, like close up to it, as it's grabbing you and raking its tentacles across you, and the mucus excreting from its body in a cloud, this is all, again, to literally transform you into an underwater denizen slave for it. You become like completely reliant on the aboleth at this point and basically become, as this next ability will show you. It also has a tail attack, which isn't nearly as interesting, but it has another ability that it can only use 3 times a day, and that is enslave. The aboleth targets one creature it can see within 30 feet of it, and the target must succeed on a DC 14 wisdom save or be magically charmed by the aboleth until the aboleth dies or until it is on a different plane of existence from the target. The charmed target is under the aboleth's control and can't take reactions, and the aboleth and the target can communicate telepathically with each other over any distance. Whenever the charmed target takes damage, the target can repeat the save. However, on a success, the effect ends, and no more than once every 24 hours, the target can also repeat the saving throw when it is at least 1 mile away from the aboleth. So essentially, once again, if you fail this save, this is the type of this is the type of charm that a lot of GMs will try to, like, you know, or even sometimes players will try to be like, I charm person them, so they have to do whatever I say now. It's like, no, that's not how the charm person works. But this is how that works. Enslave literally stipulates they are magically charmed by you or by the aboleth, and until the aboleth dies or is on a separate plane of existence. Like, that's insane.
It's like a dominate spell on.
It literally, it's like it's almost, and I wouldn't say a permanent one, but it is like a super souped up dominate person spell. Like, you're under the aboleth's control. You can't take reactions, and the aboleth and the target can make. So at that point, that would be how it would be able to know, like, your greatest desires at that point, because it communicates telepathically with you. And so it would be able to just probe your mind like that, and it can do it over any distance. And the only time you have any chance of getting out of it is if you take damage. Now, other than that, the only way you could possibly make another save is, and it's no more than once every 24 hours. You're going to do it once a day. The target, you could also repeat the save, with, you have to be at least 1 mile away from the aboleth, which again, if you were fighting him in the first place, you would be transformed into, like, this, probably, like, you know, be diseased with this, we'll call it like a merfolk disease, or the merfolk transformation, where you can't go outside of water or you'd start to slowly die and burn from lack of moisture in the water. It's like, this thing, if played correctly, is an absolutely terrifying prospect for any party. I mean, it's hard enough to fight underwater most of the time, but to have to contend with this thing underwater with all of the stuff it can throw at you and do, oh my goodness. And again, the disease that it inflicts, it's not part of the stat block, but it is absolutely part of the lore, and more in depth, is that the mucus, the disease, will slowly begin to permanently transform you into this, like, amphibious creature that is subservient to the aboleth completely. Like, you would become completely reliant on it at that point.
Yeah, it's
this thing is, even though its challenge rating is a 10, like, it's again, by itself, it's not the most deadly just in terms of its stat block. What makes it deadly is its intelligence and the experience and memories and information that it has. Again, they have complete perfect memory of eons, untold millennia and longer, maybe, of knowledge and experience that they have at their disposal. And it is more so their ability to manipulate and accrue. Like, you better believe any aboleth worth its salt has a multitude of servants and slaves and contacts and resources at its disposal. Like, it's not just a normal monster by itself that can't do anything. It is always got some kind of vast network under its, like, control and manipulation. Like, it is just scary. It is a terrifying monster.
Not enough people use aboleths.
They really don't. I would love to see more aboleths used for, like, what it really should be used. Like, it's, again, they have a similar vibe as Dagon. You know, I love these types of creatures. Like, I wish they were used more appropriately and consistently. Like, and I get it, you know, it's maybe a bit harder to be like, hey, these creatures require more water. You know, it has to be more of an aquatic adventure or whatever. But it's like, well, not necessarily. There are many places where you can say, like, there are underground reservoirs, underground, like, lakes or rivers or whatever that these things could congregate in and be in, and, like, slowly take over a city above it. you know, like same thing with Dagon. That's what Dagon did. Like he was like, yeah, I got this huge sea-based place, but I literally started flooding everything to make it more sea for me and my followers. So what, you know, there you go. So good, dude. You got another one, Sammy?
Oh, I was gonna touch on another wormy guy.
Please do.
I was gonna talk about the star spawn, specifically the larva mage.
Ooh.
Yeah, I like them a lot.
Larva mage. God. More parasites.
Yeah, basically. So Starspawn are ostensibly pawns, or in some cases servants, and even close to avatars of elder eldritch evils that live in the different planes of the multiverse, kind of out.
Usually they're like the elder evils or whatever, like in like the dark realms and stuff, you know, like
Yeah, and
similar like Barovia basically is what a lot of them are, you know.
Barovia, you have even in like probably
What is it? There's
certain
what are the Ravenloft setting dimension, the dark dimensions or whatever. There's like, again, this Barovia is the most famous one. Where is I'm blanking on the names of more of the dark dimensions. Names of the dark planes. Dark.
Yeah, but ostensibly these are these elder evils, these eldritch horrors. They don't want to leave their home, so they send these people in
They
their
want to
place.
keep everything that is there, usually in there, including.
So these are considered aberrations. This is the mage variety, so they're a little bit more powerful than some of the normal one. AC of 16, hit points of 168.
Domains of Dread. That's what they're called. The Domains of Dread.
But this is also like if you do like Planescape and stuff like that, and if you get into like these unexplored astral planes, there might be doorways, or you might accidentally end up in a place where these people are. And the whole point is, just the thinking about these places of existence can cause dread and existential horror and break your mind. And that's what these beings are ostensibly.
Yep. Starspawn. They are terrifying.
Yeah,
but dark powers. Yeah,
they are resistant to cold, and then bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical. Immune to psychic. Immune to charm, frightened, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, and restrained. They have dark vision. They speak deep speech. When they are reduced to 0 hit points, they have the return to worms feature. When the mage is reduced to 0 hit points, it breaks apart into a swarm of insects in the same place. Unless the swarm is destroyed, the mage reforms from it 24 hours later. They have multi-attack. They can make 3 slam or eldritch bolt attacks. The slam is 1d8, and then you have to succeed on a DC 19 con save or be poisoned. The eldritch bolt is like a eldritch blast on steroids. Each one is 3d10 plus 3 force damage, and it gets 3 of them a turn. Jeez. So it can do 6d10. It has a Plague of Worms ability on a 6 recharge. Each creature other than the Starspawn within 10 feet of the mage must succeed on a DC 19 dex save or take 5d8 necrotic damage and be blinded and restrained by masses of swarming worms. The affected creature takes 5d8 necrotic damage on the start of each of its turns at the start of each of the mage's turns. Yes, and the creature can repeat the same throughout the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on itself as a success. The spell casting, it can cast Mage Hand, Message, Minor Illusion, and once a day Dominate Monster with a DC of 16. Its reaction, Feed on Weakness, which is a great.
I love it. I like
when
that.
When a creature within 20 feet of the mage, so if it's getting attacked by the Plague of Worms or its abilities, fails a saving throw, the mage gains 10 temporary hit points. It has some legendary actions. It can make 1 slam attack. It can do an Eldritch Bolt with the cost of 2 actions, and for 3 actions, it can feed. Each creature restrained by the mage's Plague of Worms takes 3d8 necrotic damage, and the mage gains 6 temporary hit points. Um, it has some extra abilities based on the Elder Evil, like what cult it belongs to.
Yeah, like
There's the cult of Atropos, the World-Born Dead. It's the Gaze of Corruption. The cultist targets one creature it can see within 30 feet. The target must succeed on a DC 15 con save or take 3d10 necrotic damage and be poisoned for a minute. It can repeat the saving throw to end itself as a success. The cult of Borum, the Lake of Boiling Mud. Borum's Embrace. Once a day, the cultist touches one creature within 5 feet of it. The target must succeed on a DC 15 Dex save or be coated in sticky, steaming mud. While it is coated in this way, the target's speed is halved, and it can't use reactions, and it takes 3d6 fire damage at the start of each of its turn. The effects last for 1 minute until the cultist is incapacitated or dies, or until the target is immersed in water. The next cult of Hask, the voice of Hargut. It's once a day, Hask's presence. The cultist transforms into a tiny slug-like being and teleports onto the shoulder of a humanoid that it can see within 30 feet. The targeted humanoid must succeed on a DC 15 con saved or be charmed by the cultist. While the target is charmed, the cultist has control of it on the next turn. At the end of that turn, the target teleports to an unoccupied space it can see within 30 feet and returns to the normal form. The cultist can't be targeted directly by any attack or any other effect while it's in the slug-like form, but it is subject to areas of effect as normal. Cult of Tharizdun, the Chain God. It has a recharge 6 Tharizdun Spark as a bonus. As a bonus action, the cultist touches a simple or martial weapon or a natural weapon if it has one. The next creature hit by the touched weapon must succeed on a DC 15 Wisdom save or have disadvantage on all ability checks. The affected creature can repeat the saving throw at the end of each minute, ending the effect on itself on a success. And then Cult of Tyranthraxis, the Flamed One. Radiant flames once a day. Multi-hued flame surrounds the cultist for 1 minute until the cultist is incapacitated or dies, or until the cultist extinguishes the flame. No action required. While inflamed, the cultist has telepathy with a range of 30 feet, and it can teleport as a bonus action up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space it can see. In addition, every creature that starts its turn within 5 feet of the cultist makes a DC 15 dexterity saving throw, taking 3d10 radiant damage on a failed save or half as much damage on a successful one. These are fun because, you can take away some of the like once a day restriction, but if you find a couple of these things and their minions, because these are one of the more powerful variants, there are more like kind of minions to these. It's just, you're gonna have to deal with.
This is even like, I'm looking at some of the other the star spawn, the greater star spawn emissary for another one. Like that's like, this is like the peak epitome of body horror right here, of just like the congealing, like the emanation of like the multiple orifices that seem to be like devouring in on themselves, to transforming into like another thing that it's been. Like these things are terrifying to just look at, let alone have to deal with. Good God. Oh, fantastic, dude. God, like this horror shit is amazing.
Well, we love it because you gotta get weird. Let's get weird.
You gotta get real weird. If we're gonna get weird, if we're gonna get horror, like this, I will say, like I think at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna drop my all-time, I think, favorite horror monster that I've seen in D&D. And interestingly enough, this particular monster was actually fan created. It's not like an official monster that WotC or anything else had ever actually officially published. It was a homebrew monster that gained a lot of popularity, and was tossed around quite a bit with a bunch of different like variations and iterations, but had originally come from a guy named Goblin Punch for the original idea from an article, I believe, that he published. And this creature goes by the name False Hydra. This thing is I've seen a couple of people now like run some one-shots with this thing, and I've seen like a lot of people have broken down some of the stats and such and the like. But suffice to say, a false hydra by the name itself, man, what is the best way to explain? This thing is probably one of the epitome of that psychological horror thriller, where you finally, but with accompanied some actual physical stuff later on. So a false hydra is essentially an entity, a creature that is often born from an excessive amount of lying, negative emotion, and fear overall. Like if there's a particular city that has kind of just been like overrun with all kinds of just like duplicitousness, manipulation, fear, horror, like this again specifically like more so in a deception or lying kind of way, and corruption, a false hydra has the chance to begin to manifest and emanate from the conglomeration of all this negative stuff building up. And it will start, I believe, often in like similarly almost, I think, to either a normal hydra or even like dragons, in like potentially like 3 to 4 stages of its life. What makes a false hydra so terrifying is, as an adolescent, as like when it was like as adolescent up to like it's like young adult, it has the ability to use what is known as its sing ability. It is a specifically a monster that is like a congealed mass of flesh that extends from it like multiple heads that they look emaciated and gaunt and like weird, like think almost like symbiotes from Spider-Man, how they have like long kind of smiles, like they have a flat face with like almost like they don't have eyeballs, but they have like eye sockets of like darkness, and then like kind of long tongues and sharp serrated teeth. And they have an ability that is known as their sing ability. And when they sing, they essentially release a frequency that when people are unable not only to just see the false hydra, they literally forget that it exists, even if it's right in front of them. If you can hear the song, you cannot see or perceive the false hydra in any way, shape, or form unless it like touches you. You could like touch it, but your mind would then immediately, like as soon as it pulls away, your mind would then fill in the gaps and be like, oh, I must have accidentally like just felt some wind or something. Like it makes it incapable, as long as you can hear it sing, to perceive it or remember that you saw it before, that you perceived it before. It only ever stops singing when it goes to feed, and it will usually feed on like homeless people, like stray cats, dogs, animals. And during the time it feeds, the singing stops, and you're able to then potentially perceive it. However, unless you know about it, you're not going to do anything. And the interesting thing, here's also where the caveat comes in. Every creature it devours, once it does so, it gets stronger. But on top of that, when it begins to sing again, you forget that creature ever existed along with the false hydra.
That's ridiculous.
You fill in holes. Like the problem being is like eventually, as people start to slowly disappear, no one remembers or knows why. Like a husband, like whose wife was eaten by a false hydra, will see like her clothes in the closet and not really understand why it's there. He'll just be like, oh, someone must have left their clothes here from before I moved in or something, even though he's been there for like 10 years or something. He completely forgets that he ever had a wife at any point. and as it happens more, people begin to kind of go crazy because their minds start to be unable to rationalize the discrepancy in what they're seeing as opposed to what the song is doing to their minds. Eventually, though, when a false hydra feeds enough, like again, this is the thing. If you have a party that comes into a town where a false hydra has been like feeding for a little bit. They've been talking about, and nobody even knows that disappearances have happened because they can't remember the people who disappeared. They don't even know that they're gone.
Yeah,
Like a party will walk into town, they'll like meet like, you know, a vendor or like a market person, right? And be like, hey, how's it go? They bought something from them. The next day they come back, that stall is empty. And they're like, hey, what happened to the market? It's like, and the GM's like, what do you mean? There's no market person there. What are you talking about? And they're like, what? It's like, you don't recall any market person being there. That stall was empty when you came in yesterday. And then your party members are like, but no, but what? What do you mean? And it's like they meet, you know, any other people, like, you know, they meet an individual on the street or they help, you know, like whatever, they get eaten too. The party can't remember. But then sometimes as the party goes on, they go for a rest. They wake up the next day. Oh, they've got scratches all over them. There's a letter in your handwriting. You don't ever recall writing that letter. And it says, you know, earplugs or something. It says, you know, wax. It says, don't listen. And that's it. And you're like, what? How? I what? And like, you know, eventually though, once the false hydra feeds enough, it gets strong enough to where, and big enough, like this thing gets to gargantuan proportion, like even maybe colossal to Titanic, depending. And once it's strong enough, it no longer needs to necessarily sing and will instead like erupt from below. It usually likes to like congregate in like the sewer systems or any underground tunnels or in abandoned areas to keep itself safe. And then once it like is strong, it erupts out or from wherever it is, and it will literally then begin to feed on everything just, you know, free in its destruction. However, it can still sing, but its song shifts kind of the effect in terms of, instead of it like causing people to forget it, it can release like a large, like couple mile long radius I saw at one point for one iteration that literally starts to then bring people to it. Like people have to make like a
siren call.
Yeah, like a wisdom saving throw to try to resist. This time they can, because the song before that makes you forget, there is no save. There's no save for it. You just forget it. And everything else that is eaten up to that point. But this song, you can try to resist it. But if you fail, it like makes it turn, it hypnotizes you, and you end up walking toward, and you will be drawn towards it, almost like in a charmed way, to then begin feeding, for it to feed on you again. And this thing, the amount of psychological warfare and horror, and then the eventual actual, like, you know, the body horror along with it, the all of it. It's like, it's such an amazing conglomeration, literally, of all the different horror like genre and types that you can exhibit. Like it's incredible. Like this is my all-time favorite like horror D&D monster. And it's not even like an official monster. Like a lot of people have been like throwing their own little spins on it and adding to it after a while, and it's just like it is a beautiful creature. People have tried to stat it out a little bit here and there as best as they could, to kind of give it like,
that would be difficult.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's like I have like a little bit of a slight kind of stat block here, depending kind of like the iteration. Like I think this would kind of be considered like maybe close to it being like fully grown, because again, these things can get like colossal in size depending on how much they eat. But this is like, I would consider this to be like a young adult false hydra, which would probably be the ones that your party would usually encounter if they ever do at that point. But it's considered to be a large, huge aberration, neutral evil with an armor class of 15. It has like hit points of 150 plus an extra 100 hit points for every additional head that might come off. Because again, like a normal hydra, you cut off this thing's head, 2 more grow in its place. It has a speed of 5 feet, but a burrow speed of 40. Strength is 16, dex is 10, intelligence is what? Oh, I see. Yeah, strength is 16, dex is 10, con is 16, intelligence is 8, wisdom is 20, and charisma is 20. It's got saving throws of wisdom and charisma for proficiency, and it is immune to the blinded, charmed, deafened, grappled, prone, stunned, and knocked unconscious conditions. 120 feet of dark vision, and understands the languages of all its victims. Again, the ability Blind Song. All hostile creatures that can hear the Hydra sing will be unable to, Blind Song. All hostile creatures that can hear the Hydra sing must make a DC 15 Wisdom save at the start of their turn. If the Hydra sings with more than one head, all hostile creatures subtract 4. On a failure, the creature forgets the Hydra is there. So again, this is granting like a little bit more. I would say like if you're in like an actual fight with it, I think that would be fair to like add the save. Normally the save, you don't get a save for it. You just fail. But I would say if you're actively fighting it, you would still be able to make a save to, again, have your brain resist and contend with the discrepancy of the fact that you're fighting something. You just fought that thing. It's like a similar thing of like, if you're trying to charm somebody, they get disadvantage to the roll, like if you're fighting them. I think it's a similar thing here, which I like.
They get advantage on the roll.
Yeah. It's like they get disadvantage to charm a person if you're fighting it. And so it's like, I think a similar thing here where it's like, it'll be hard for them to just simply forget that they're fighting something unless they have to make a save. But still, a DC 15 is nothing to sneeze at. Like that'll still be difficult to make if you don't have high wisdom. And then on top of that, if part of your party just fails, they just forget the Hydra's there. Like they're just like, even if it's like, oh, some of your party remembers, if the other party fails, unless the Hydra stops singing, like they just forget. And then on top of that, if you sing with more than one head, they subtract a D4. You basically get baned from that saving throw. So it's also just like, Jesus. The Hydra as a bonus action can regrow a head that has died, and it takes 3 regrowth bonus actions to fully regrow a head. It regains 20 hit points each time it uses regrow. So it can just bonus action heal like as much as it wants. This thing is just beautiful. And I love it kind of even more so as well, because it's like it's a community creation almost.
Yeah, that's neat.
People have taken this, they've added on to it, they've given their own little spin, and it's been a staple in the community for a while now. And it is an amazing, like I want so badly to play in a game with this monster. I would love so badly to do this, but again, I want it to be done right. I would want it to be done by a GM who really knows what they're doing with this creature, because again, it is a very specific kind of execution. Like to be able to implement the type of psychological horror and aspects with your players, and like it would be great. It's great. But yeah, any other monsters that you wanted to give?
Yeah, I have an honorable mention that I love, and it's nothing. It's not a special monster. It's nothing crazy, but the connotations it brings to fantasy.
I think my
no worries.
My headphones died on me.
Oh no.
All right, there we go. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. This is just more of one of those monsters that gives a connotation for fantasy that I love so much, which is the Otyugh.
Ah, the Otyugh.
Which I'm not going to go over all of its specific things, but it's ostensibly a large aberration that sits in gross places like swamps or sewers it's huge, with these like weird, this big mouth with like weird leafy tendrils on it that shovel garbage and carrion and things into its mouth.
Yeah, it's almost like a literal garbage disposal.
It has this like arm stock with eyes on it that it peeks out while it's eating.
Yeah.
And these things, they're neutral. They don't care. Like they just want to eat.
No, they're not evil. They just like garbage.
Not just garbage, but just gross things. So, it talks about in the wilderness, they'll dwell in stagnant swamps, scum-filled ponds, and damp forest dells. And then they'll also, in the city, it'll be sewers, middens, and like manure-filled animal pens.
Yeah.
And then the awesome thing is that because they only care about garbage, you'll find stuff in there like magic items and things of that nature that they don't care about. They're just in there.
They just like to, they're hoarders in that way. And they're just, I encountered an Otyugh in a game before, and it was so funny
I
and
love
cute.
them so much.
They're like big trashy dogs. That's all. They're big trash puppers, you know.
But they have the symbiotic guardians header, which is sentient subterranean beings can coexist with Otyughs, employing them as garbage disposals.
Literally,
with such
that's
plentiful
what I'm saying.
sustenance, Otyughs grow fat in their wallows, unmoved by any other drive or desire. This sedentary gluttony makes them reliable guardians. As long as it is fed, an Otyugh refrains from attacking other creatures. However, would-be Otyugh masters can easily underestimate the quantity of waste, carrion, and meat necessary to keep an Otyugh from wandering off in search of food. More than one trained Otyugh has eaten its keeper after devouring all the waste in its wallow. And it's one of those monsters, like, if you just stay out of its way, it's fine. But if you are not suspecting one of these things, they are terrifying.
They are horrendous to look at, for sure.
The reality is that they're not particularly strong.
No, but
if they grapple one of your if they grapple one or two of your party members, they hold on to them and they just slam them into things. And it's
or
awesome.
They'll bite them and cause disease and poison and shit.
Yeah,
like they do have limited telepathy, which is nice. Like you can communicate with them slightly, but like
they're adorable. They only speak Otyugh. It's the only language they know.
Yep, they only speak.
It's great. It's great. They speak in simple messages, and you can understand it if it lets you. But that's it. You can't talk back to it at all.
Yeah.
The reality is that these creatures, if you leave them alone, are fine. But the idea of a magic aberrant garbage disposal that lives in a city sewer is honestly as horrifying as it is wonderful.
It's like a big burly, like fatty, slightly more monstrous, like displacer beast almost, with like its little tentacles and stuff, and then its face. Like it's again, the one that I met again, they're like big trash puppers, you know. You just gotta be,
if it will also eat you and you're gonna notice.
I mean, you know, it's like you know, you just gotta be aware, as with any wild animal. You know, you just gotta be aware of what their instincts.
They look like weird tentacled dinosaurs. And the reality is like, if you're just wandering around in a sewer with a group of adventurers and you step into one of these things and you watch as all of a sudden all the shit that was right next to you just starts to fall away as this thing
emanates out of
the ground and then just like grabs somebody and slams them against the they're awesome. I love them so much. They're such a classic monster that I can't not mention them.
I guess we should also, if we're doing honorable mentions too, we might as well again cover our boy Orcus as well as the demon lord of undeath. You know, he's the man who wrote the book on the song Spooky Scary Skeletons. You know what I mean? Like he is that is his thing. Orcus, also known as Tenebrous, was a demon prince and purported primordial that served as master of the undead from the depths of the abyss. Returned from undeath, but not technically alive, the demon lord of undeath was the multiverse's staunchest advocate for stagnation, seeking to exterminate all life, to darken and desolate all worlds until all that remained in his static reality were undead moved only by his will. The Blood Lord was believed to be one of the mightiest demon lords and one that inspired dread in the hearts of gods themselves. The shadow that was among the powers of the abyss, most often worshipped as deity by the mortals of the prime material plane, and even more than the prince of demons himself, was close to obtaining true divinity. Like that is why Orcus is often considered Demogorgon's like main rival, though I believe Gratz at this point has also gotten up there. It's kind of like a three-way deadlock between them now, like of being like they are the three main rivals of each other. But it's hard pressed to find a resume like Orcus, because he is, of all like the evil, or rather I should say demon specifically, because Asmodeus is still technically an actual deity, but of all demons that have ever conspired and emanated and manifested from the abyss, Orcus was always the closest so far to becoming a true deity at one point.
I mean, he's worshipped by people. He can command lead armies of undead.
Literally. And we're not even don't even get us wrong. Even in the game itself, with his stat block, it is not an exaggeration to say that he can literally conjure an army of undead to fight you and the players mechanically. Like it would be super annoying. It would be way too much unless you're like a super high level party that can decimate like a decent amount. But like he could if he wanted to. One of his best quotes, like we have a quote here from him, which is amazing. It's so freaking cool. He literally goes to say, "I will be the last creature when I am done. The cosmos will then be perfect, free of the braying abominations that are all other living things." And if that right there doesn't sum up the totality of Orcus's machinations, then nothing will. Yeah. Like as it says, he wants to completely eradicate all life save for his own. He just doesn't like it. He just doesn't like life. It's too loud. It's obnoxious. It's annoying. It's like he's just not cool with it, bro. He does not appreciate it in any of its forms. Undeath is the only true state of being. They're quiet, obedient, uncomplicated, not necessary for all this other crap that happens.
And I mean, it's the god of undeath ostensibly.
Yeah, man, he's nihilistic and broody. Like that's literally what they call him. Like he's he's the 4chan. He's the 4chan representative in D&D.
Oh, that's
like,
terrible.
Man, I'm so sick of all these lifers, man. All these IRL dudes who just and girls who just always want to like do all this stuff and perpetuate life. Life sucks, okay? Life is pain, it's horror, it's sorrow and sadness, man. All right.
Well, he's a little bit...
I just rather it not be a thing anymore, okay?
Yeah, he's a little bit more, I think, intellectual and well spoken than that. But in all intents and purposes, this dude,
that's, in
this dude
terms,
harbors.
that's kind of what he's preaching.
This guy perpetuates cults of undeath, so that there's always somewhere in the world an influence of Orcus. Any lich, all these people, they're directly tied.
Like it is often considered that he was the one that provided the first mages with the secrets to lichdom. Like it is thought that he was the one that literally did that. Or even vampirism. Any of the most like iconic, famous versions of like upper, powerful, intelligent undeath was thought to have originated or come from Orcus, like himself. Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it stays true to form. If we're talking about one of the Lords of the Abyss, it's
and one of considered to be like one of the big three of the Abyss. Whereas he is always considered to be one of the most prominent, powerful. There are again only two, I think, that would ever openly try to challenge Orcus, and that would be Gratz and Demogorgon. Like those are the only two that have any real capacity to challenge his power, really, in any way. Like there is there's a lot about him. Like he is he's awesome. I love Orcus so much and all the stuff that he can do. Like again, you just check out his stat sheet. I mean, even his wand itself is just bonkers, bro.
That's the real. I mean, like, he has good abilities by himself, but with his wand, it's like, hi, do you want either? You can make hundreds of skeletons.
It's literally like Orcus Light. Like his wand is Orcus Light. It's like it'd be like fighting Orcus, and then like a small like a simulacrum of Orcus on top of that with both of those
created into a sentient weapon.
Yeah, literally. Like it's just like. He honestly would be the perfect staple for any, like, if you want to do like an epic level Halloween special, perfect use, perfect staple for that kind of thing. I mean, honestly, a lot of
epic level Halloween.
I was gonna say a lot of the demon lords would, like, Demogorgon would probably also fit, as he's the demon lord of insanity and chaos and, like, prince of demons, literally. But again, if you're talking about, again, spooky, scary skeletons, Orcus is your man for certain. Like all the undead, all the undeath. He could summon banshees and ghosts that we talked about earlier. He could literally bring all of that stuff. Yeah, man. Like that's I do believe with that. I think that's unless you got some other honorable mentions you want to lay down, Sammy. I think we have successfully showcased to you guys some of our personal favorite choices for that special time of the year when you want to get a little spine tingly, you want to get a little scared, with some friends, stuff with your peeps or whatever, and maybe into campaigns. Heck, even if it's not that special time of the year, I would highly advise and suggest, throw a little bit of fear and horror sometimes into some sessions. It can go a long way to like mixing, rippling up the session a bit, like giving a bit of a fresh taste, because obviously, your players are probably feeling powerful and good, and it's good to have that. If you're doing it right, I would hope that they do. And so it's always nice to maybe throw, because one of the best things about a lot of these monsters is, despite the fact that they're again more raw physical might or power is kind of less overall, but their threat level, again, their ability to subvert the expectations of your party in terms of their danger due to those little special abilities that they have, is what really drives home the fear. When your party, walks into a place and, oh snap, you throw like, three ghosts, maybe two or three banshees at them at once, and just watch as they're like, oh, well, they got like a low AC, and then just watch as like the banshees just scream with a wail. Someone fails that wisdom save, and they go down to 0 instantly. And on top of that, you got another ghost that goes in and tries to possess a party member. One of them fails that save, and they're possessed instantly. And then you got to start fighting. You got to do all this stuff, and then on top, like it's on top of that, you have the ghost use horrifying visage, and if they fail, one of them is aged potentially up to 40 years instantly. Like that stuff it's so rare in almost any other monster or like type in the game that it's like that. Almost nobody comes prepared for that kind of stuff in most like D&D games, right? Like you don't expect to have that kind of just out of nowhere. Like, wait, what? This was that? What? What just happened? Like, unless you have some kind of divine caster, like you guys, like especially, you will watch them flip into like an absolute unbridled source of like fear, paranoia, and it's great. And hopefully they would take that in a fun way and be like, oh my God. I would also just advise, if they don't have any divine casters, maybe provide them with one. Give them a bit of a Deus Ex Machina moment of like, hey, a cleric is coming along with you to help, maybe exorcise this restless house, this haunted house or whatever that's been having like ghosts and apparitions and specters and stuff. You know what I mean? just have one of them, because the turn undead spell, what do they call it again when you use turn undead? It's your divine channel divinity. Channel divinity. That's what it is. Like that'll work. They also should have other spells, like again, protected from good and evil, dispel good and evil. Like just give them that stuff just in case, to be fair, because this stuff is very punishing if they, either don't have someone of a divine persuasion with them, or if they just, you fail a save. So,
it's,
but overall,
we love the weird, creepy stuff here.
It's always a great addition to any campaign at any time, in my opinion. But we figured it would be quite appropriate for this month, or rather the end of this month, as it were, as today is officially Halloween. And
Halloween.
So, this video will probably be coming up a couple of days, if not a week, technically after Halloween. But hey,
hey,
we got in there though. We still got one in, and I say that is a win for us. Good job, us.
Yeah, we try.
But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching and tuning in up to this point. If you did, please do remember to like, comment, subscribe. Tell us some of your favorite horrible, scary, terrifying, monsters that you like to maybe throw in there. You'd like to do a campaign with, and some of your own experiences if you've already had them. We appreciate you guys, and we'll be sure to catch y'all soon. All right.
All right.
Take care.
Bye guys.
Now.